Well, thank you everyone so much for joining. This is really, really exciting. This is the first one of these that we've done, these FEDTalks events. Everything we do at Demand Collective is what we wish existed as demand marketers. And I've been to a lot of virtual summits, and I kind of had the same qualms with all of them, which were a lot of fluff, a lot of frameworks, a lot of vendors who are pitching stuff designed as content. And the sessions are way too long, like 60-minute sessions where I'm like, guys, I have better things to do with my time. So I really wanted to make the event that I wish existed, which was really 20-minute sessions, no fluff, get the smartest practitioners I can find and bring them on to share with you guys like battle-tested frameworks of what's actually working for them. So I'm really excited to do that. And thank you all for joining and supporting. Again, this is the first one of these that we've done, so I'm looking forward to doing more of those. If you want the agenda for today to understand which sessions there are, you can just go to demandcollective.io/FEDTalks. And then I wanted to take a quick second before we dive in to thank our sponsors. So these events are only possible because of the sponsors that we have and who support this community. So the first one is Primer. I'm like honored to have them as a sponsor. They're a really awesome tool for anyone who's doing any sort of paid ads management. We all know that the targeting is like the most important lever, which Tyler's going to talk about in his session. But the targeting is so important. And so I think it's honestly like irresponsible not to be at least checking out a tool like Primer, which lets you go beyond traditional firmographic targeting. So whether it's on LinkedIn and you want to increase your match rates with your uploaded contact list, or if you're going to other channels like Facebook and Instagram and you want to have that B2B level targeting, they let you basically have the same level targeting down to the person level that you would have on LinkedIn, but on Facebook and Instagram, which is a huge unlock if you're running any ads in other channels. You know that those channels are cheaper, and the trade-off is usually you don't get the same quality with Primer. You do. So that's awesome. They're a really cool tool. They sponsor me in this community so I can put on events like this with the hopes that I'll drive them some leads and demo requests. So please, if it's interesting, check them out. Go to their website and say that you heard about them through FEDTalks, the event, and they'll give you a special gift. He said a special gift for your time, one of those incentivized demos. All right. So that's Primer. And then the second tool who's a great sponsor of ours is Customer.io. They're just like a modern, better customer engagement platform. Really cool. They're trusted by Notion, Lovable, Buffer. A lot of these teams that want more power, more flexibility without clunkiness. So yeah, really cool tool. They're also offering you an incentive to check them out. They're giving you a $100 gift card. If you sign up for a demo, I'll drop the link to that in the chat. The link is try.customer.io/mini demo. Try.customer.io/mini demo. That's all for me. I'm excited. Really, really excited for these sessions. The first one we have is with Tyler Calder, CMO at PartnerStack. He has cool glasses and great lighting, but also he's one of the smartest CMOs that I've talked to or met. We met at an in-person event a while ago, and he was just kind of walking me through what his go-to-market strategy looked like, and it just all makes sense. It's one of those rare times where it makes sense. You got like fundamentals taken super seriously and really awesome results that they're driving. So Tyler's going to walk through their go-to-market strategy as a whole, how they're using AI and a better ICP model to select accounts and work them. And yeah, I'm very excited for it. Tyler, I will give you the stage.
All right, awesome. Thank you. And hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen. We will get going here. I am watching the chat, so feel free to drop anything in and I'll answer as we go. So like Eric said, I head up marketing here at PartnerStack, coming up on about 6 years with PartnerStack, so a pretty good run, especially in the world of tech. And what I'm going to talk about today is really how we very much focused our targeting all of our go-to-market efforts around a very tightly defined ICP. And that was a bit of a shift for us. I think, the mistake that I've made in my past is candidly, I didn't care that much about ICP or personas. I just cared about getting people in a pipeline, selling them onto the next one, right? I had this mentality of the market will tell me who's in my ICP, right? As long as I get in front of them, they raise their hand and say, hey, you know what? I'm willing to pay for this. I'm willing to give you money. Great. They're in our ICP, right? That was kind of my mentality. I'll talk in a minute why that's incorrect, which, I'm probably late to the party. I think everybody here knows why that's incorrect. But really, the refocus led to pretty significant improvements in our metrics. Huge increase in what our cost to acquire a dollar of pipeline became, our cost to acquire a dollar of net new revenue, ACV improvements, all that fun stuff. But if I go back a little bit, so I go back to Q1 of 2023, and this is my made up version of how I thought my kid might, artistically draw out what she probably heard of some of our ELT meetings, which was a lot of finger pointing and a lot of finger pointing because in Q1 of 2023, we ended up churning more revenue than we signed in Q4 2022. Not great, right? Pretty leaky bucket. She also drew what's on my hat right here, if anybody's curious. And what I found interesting in these conversations was people were pointing fingers at sales, right? You were overselling, not setting the right expectations, people pointing the fingers at product, right? The product doesn't work the way it needs to, maybe we don't actually have product market fit. People pointing the fingers at customer success. You don't know how to serve our customers. You don't know how to be consultative. And the interesting thing was nobody was pointing the finger at marketing, which I didn't totally understand because we're the ones who filled the pipeline with all of these accounts that ended up churning. And so we sort of took a step back as a marketing team, raised our hand and said, hey, like we think this is a marketing issue. Let's come back with a recommendation on how we might solve it. And kudos to our director of demand gen at the time, Joe. He was the one who found KeyPlay, which was a platform that we used, and they really helped us build out this custom model to really understand our ICP. So that's the bulk of what I want to chat through today is how we went about that, what it led to, and the summary of what it led to very quickly before we get into the details is what I mentioned at the top, right? Pretty significant increase in the value of our pipeline quarter over quarter. Pretty significant increase in basically every metric you can look at. Rep productivity, ACV, time to sell, all of the fun stuff. We also saw a pretty significant increase in our enterprise pipeline as well, just as we got a little bit more focused. So again, really saw good bookings metrics before we did all this work. Terrible churn, right? So very leaky bucket. And we said, hey, you know what? This is something we got to fix. So that's what we doubled down on. Like I mentioned, we worked with KeyPlay as the platform to really help us with this. So I would say between the marketing team, our RevOps team, which was very critical and instrumental in helping us through this, and the KeyPlay team, we built a model, and I'll share what that model looks like to a certain degree, some of the signals, to really understand what accounts appear as though they'll be most successful with PartnerStack. And so that was the view that we took was who do we think is going to be most successful with our product today? What are those signals? What can we learn from our existing customer base, the ones that aren't churning, the ones that are sticking, expanding? What are the patterns amongst those? How do we go find kind of similarly profiled accounts? So that's where we started. That led to us scoring well over 50,000 accounts in the market. We then segmented all of those accounts between A, B, C, D, which is how we tiered them. That led to our account selection. So very much ended up becoming focused on KeyPlay tier A and B accounts. And then what I always try to remind people and talk about internally is it's not that C and D are bad accounts. It's just that they are accounts where we predict they're not going to see as much value out of our platform as an A and B account will today. What that leads to is really interesting conversations with the product team around, okay, well, what is it about the platform where C and D accounts may not be getting the type of value that A and Bs are? Where should we be building? What should we be putting on roadmap to make them successful? So again, I always try to make that clear that, A and Bs today, yeah, they're better for us than C and D. That doesn't mean C and D are bad accounts. They still fit within what we would consider an ICP. We just need to figure out from a product standpoint, from a customer engagement model standpoint, how do we make them more successful? So again, leads to really interesting conversations there. So we scored those accounts, and then what I'll show in a few slides here, we really started to focus on, well, how do we engage those accounts? How do we structure our go-to-market around them? That type of thing. For context, this is what when I joined PartnerStack, our ICP looked like. I don't think we have a chat, but we do have the Q&A, so feel free to drop into the Q&A. How would you score the effectiveness of this ICP? 1 being terrible, 10 being, hey, you know what, pretty good. My experience, this is a lot of what a documented ICP had looked like with other companies I had worked at, other clients I had worked with, doing freelance, very broad in nature. I would suggest maybe it's not terrible, but it's certainly not, a 10, pretty good. I put this maybe at a 4 or 5, maybe a 6 if we want to be overly generous. A lot of problems with it, right? Way too broad. There's no real scoring or segmentation. There's no data that really helps back up why we think this is our ICP, why we think these accounts are going to be successful with us. And so we wanted to get a whole lot more defined. And so again, that's really what we worked with KeyPlay and our RevOps team to understand is what are the data-backed signals, variables, characteristics of accounts that suggest, again, they would be successful with PartnerStack. That became effectively everything we anchored our entire go-to-market to. I'll share some slides in a second that are internal that we shared with our board to show sort of just how important this has become to our business. From a KeyPlay standpoint, I mean, this is what it looks like as a product. So these are, there's a couple tabs in here. So these are showing, about 3,500 net new accounts that have been scored and identified. Under my accounts, that's where we have 50,000 accounts that we've scored, ones that we're confident in that scoring. We're confident in the scoring because over the course of, the past 18, almost 24 months, we've back tested it all. We've seen something that's scored as an A will onboard faster, activate faster. They tend to stick and expand with us. And then all of the kind of pre-sale metrics I mentioned, time to sale, ACV, all of that fun stuff, much healthier when they're an A versus a D. So this is sort of what it looks like. You can see right in KeyPlay all of the different signals around the org. So are they hiring? Are they not? What type of headcount growth have they seen? Do they actually have people in partnerships, which is, who we sell into? We have a lot of relevancy signals, that type of thing. This is what it really looks like on our side. So 58 signals in total that we've identified as being meaningful to our business. A few examples, because this is obviously very small. Part of the reason it's very small is just, don't think my team wants me to share all of it. But hey, if you shoot me an email, I'll share it because that's what we're here for. But a few examples of signals that work really well for us. Increased paid media combined with decreased organic traffic is a good signal. It's a good signal because it suggests a company is going through what a lot of SaaS companies are going through right now, which is shrinking organic reach, trying to brunt force their way through paid media to make up for that difference. It's a great opportunity for partnerships to step in and be a scaled out revenue channel that's a little bit more efficient than just dumping cash into paid media. Companies that are a PLG motion and sell into SMB, That's a good signal for us because partners love working with brands that have a fast sales cycle, that have a PLG motion where they can get potentially compensated for um, a freemium sign up or a free trial sign up, and then compensated when it converts into a paying customer as well. And because, it's SMB, it tends to turn around pretty quickly. So that's another good signal. Another one would be if they have 3+ tech integration partners in place, which we can see by scraping their website. It's a good signal because if your partner program leans into having integration partners, it's a good signal that you're taking it seriously, that it's a meaty part of your business. It's not easy to do these integrations well, so you're probably not going to just up and dismantle your partner program one day, which unfortunately is somewhat common. So those are just examples. And then the thing that we've more recently started to do is create a custom model for our different buying groups. So we have a PRM buyer, so a partner relationship management buyer. They typically sit in a partner org that ladders up to sales. We have an affiliate or influencer buyer, typically laddering up to marketing. And then we have partners that join our network. They're three very different personas, three very different types of buyers. And so now we're creating a custom model for all three, which I think will be even more impactful because historically it's been a blended model, which has been good, but I think this will get us even more focused. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to skip to a couple things here. So before we got hyper focused on this idea of who our ICP was in a very data driven way, we effectively went after everything we could with our whole go to market. Whether it was SMB, mid market, enterprise, we would have marketing going after them, sales going after them, partnerships going after them. And again, like in hindsight, it's not rocket science to look at this and say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Like, how can you afford to throw marketing, sales, and partnerships at an SMB the same way you would an enterprise? Right? It doesn't make sense. And so what we shifted to was trying to drive a lot of clarity internally around where we were going to spend our times, what people were, certain functions and people in those functions were responsible for. And so this is like literally something that we presented at our all hands to bring the whole company along for the ride to say, if it's an SMB key play tier A account, that's a great account for us. We can serve it really well. They're going to see value, but we're really going to trust our inbound engine to bring those to us. We're not going to ask partners to go after those types of accounts. We're not going to outbound them. We're not really going to do any ABM plays. It is our inbound engine, which is highly efficient, going to bring those to us. If it's enterprise key play tier A, that's full go-to-market activation. That's like one-to-one ABM. And I'm not going to get overly tactical because all of the sessions following me, I think, get very clearly into the tactics in a really, really interesting, solid way. But there we say, yeah, financially, this makes sense. Let's throw everything we've got at getting an enterprise key play tier A account. It's good for us. We know they're going to expand, they're going to stick. And then when you go down, something that might be a key play enterprise tier D, we're not actively going to go after those accounts, but it is still an enterprise account. If they come to us through inbound, we're not going to turn them away. We're not going to disqualify them. Let's talk to them. Let's figure out what they're trying to do. If there's a fit, then let's get into a sales motion with them. If not, then we'll suggest that and tell them why. This helped us, like I said, kind of focus everybody and get everybody aligned on where we should be spending our time, where we shouldn't be spending our time, where we should spend dollars, where we shouldn't be spending dollars, that type of thing. And so when we really try to simplify and think about, well, how do we go out and engage these accounts versus just sort of spraying and praying? How do we get in front of these very specific accounts that we've scored and have modeled? It certainly starts with making sure that we have clean data, making sure that we have the right tooling. I know everybody's always interested in the tooling that other folks use. So for us, it's KeyPlay, which I mentioned. We use Clay for a lot of contact level enrichment. We also use Clay plus Webflow, which I can show really quickly in this screen, to scale out our personalized ABM landing pages. So this is just a snapshot, but we'll drop in our target accounts. So you can see some of them here. If any of you belong to these accounts, would love to chat with you. And then what this does is connect right into Webflow. So it will customize different components of the page, like the title. It'll automatically pull in the target account logo. It will pull in existing customers that we have that look like those target accounts, pull in any existing case studies, pull in their logos as customers. We'll flag who the account owner is so they can book directly with that account owner. So all of this is done through Clay and Webflow, and it's all being fed by our key play data on what our target accounts are. We use Unify to sort of orchestrate all of our outbound messaging, all of our email, kind of incorporate some of our intent signals. And then when it comes to intent, we use Bombora through Unify and Vendor, which is a procurement platform, and G2 for what I find to be really high quality intent. And then from a creation standpoint, we literally spend every dollar we have going after these not 50,000 accounts, but of the 50,000, there's about 8,000 that would be our target A and B accounts that we're going after. So every dollar we spend is focused there. What we've found to be most successful are LinkedIn thought leadership ads, really as a way to distribute our content, our thoughts, our customer stories in front of those target accounts. And then LinkedIn conversational ads have been pretty impactful for us as well. And then we'll leverage, like I said, Unify to really take advantage of those first and third party intent signals and outbound these target accounts. So Heather's asking, how long did it set up to build Clay and Webflow mapping, and how would you evaluate the cost of Clay? Do you have an in-house operator? Super good question. So what I just showed didn't actually take that long. It took about half a day with myself and our demand gen person. The Clay credits can certainly get out of control, but it's been pretty reasonable for us. For context, reasonable, we're at about $600 a month. So for us, that feels reasonable given what we're doing with it. And then what else was in there?
Tyler, I hate to do this. I hate to do this.
Yeah, cut
We're
me
ba
off.
we're basically at time. So here's what we're gonna do.
Yeah, yeah.
First of all, I'm gonna ask you kindly, let's spend 60 seconds going through the rest of this, and then I'm hoping you'll be down. You're on the spot right now. How about you
Mm.
come to Demand Collective, you do a private Q&A
Yeah,
with the
yeah.
community. We can hit some of these questions, other questions, go deeper on the scoring model, especially go deeper on how you're engaging
Totally.
these accounts.
Yeah. Let's do
Okay,
that.
sweet.
And I'll type in answers to these
Yeah,
questions too.
perfect.
Yep.
Perfect.
Sweet. I can stop sharing to let everyone else go.
Or if we can go through maybe the account measurement stuff like in 30 seconds or 60 seconds, I think will be interesting for people, the weather
Yeah,
report.
I'll do this. I'll do this quickly. So every week, every Monday, I push out a weekly weather report to our whole company. It's mostly our ELT that digest it. It looks at how we're trending against targets, but really what people are curious about, how are we trending against A, B, C, D accounts. So right now, in any given week, about 75% of our pipeline that we're generating are from A and B accounts. When we first started this, it was closer to 20, 30% were from A, B, and accounts. So that's why there's such a focus there. Uh, we can share this. It's in the slide deck. This is literally how we talk to our board about what the opportunity looks like, how many accounts we're going after, what our progress is. And then this is like literally how we ask for more budget by looking at, here's our NDR by tier. Here's why we need, a little bit more budget to go after some of these key accounts, all that fun stuff. So I'll leave it at that. I'll answer the questions in the chat. And sorry for rambling.
No, this is amazing. Thanks so much. Yeah, I think you just all makes sense. You map your whole market, you map it out into TAM, which is anyone you could sell to, SAM, which is who you could sell to right now, and then ICP, which is a spectrum of fit. And then prioritize effectively, which is like spend more on your best accounts and cut spend on those accounts that maybe your sales team thought were good accounts, but actually aren't fit and are going to churn.
There you go.
And then you turn into Tyler and you get A, great lighting, B, great hats that are drawn by your children, and C, you keep your CMO job for multiple years and get invited onto prestigious industry virtual events where you're going to share your learnings with everyone else. So thanks so
That's
much, Tyler.
perfect.
This is awesome.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, like we said, Tyler's gonna be coming on to Demand Collective now to do a private Q&A about all this. So if you want to join the community, you can ask Tyler more questions, and then feel free to drop more questions in the chat, and he'll answer in text. All right, thanks so much. Next up, we're gonna have Mary Keough talk about her demand gen strategy and how they're driving 10-to-1 pipe to spend. Before that, like I said, I want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor Primer, who I'm like honored to be partnering with. They're a really awesome tool. I'm going to bring Keith on stage real quick to kind of share a little bit and a special exciting offer with you guys.
Oh, whoa. Let's not overpromise here, Eric.
Yeah, it's not too good.
Yeah. But hey, everybody, thanks so much for coming. I'm Keith. I'm one of the co-founders here at Primer, and we're really proud to be supporting Demand Collective and just honestly excited that our sponsorship could help make an event like this happen. We did not get involved to make this a sale thing, so I'll keep my spiel really brief. But the reason why we're supporting Demand Collective is this group represents exactly who we serve. I think B2B marketers have a really tough job, tighter budgets, tougher attribution, shrinking signals, and we want to make it a little bit easier. So we give money to Eric to make to put on events, and then we also help unlock better targeting on both B2B and B2C ad channels. In Primer, you can build an audience of exactly your ICP and sync it out to Google, Meta, LinkedIn, TikTok, Reddit, with 30 to 90% match rates. And it's a pretty big unlock. We've also rolling out website de-anonymization because heck, you kind of have to these days. And we've got built-in holdout groups to help you more easily prove impact. Yeah, so if you'd like to learn more about us, check out our website, sayprimer, say.com. And if you sign up in the How Did You Hear About Us, put FEDTalks, and we'll send you a little holiday gift as a thank you. And Eric, yeah, thanks for bringing everyone together. We're really thrilled to be a part of it. And stick around for Timo from Cyberhaven. He's one of our customers, and we're stoked that he's joined. Yeah.
Thanks, Keith. I appreciate it. Everyone say thank you, Keith, for paying the bills at Demand Collective so we can have cool events like this. But yeah, Primer's a great tool. Check it out, especially if you're, like I said, if you're doing any sort of ad spend at all and you want to dial in your targeting, it's at least worth checking out to see if there's any alpha you can squeeze out there. All right.
Right.
Next up, we have Mary Keough. Mary is an incredibly smart demand gen marketer who I've been following for a while. I love how she can simplify complex demand gen problems into kind of like no fluff answers that we all love, which is what we're here for. She works at CoLab Software, which is like a really fast growing, I think, Series C company, and doing some really interesting demand gen work in an interesting space. So I will give it to you, Mary. Thanks so much for sharing with us.
Heck yeah, thank you, Eric. I'm super excited. All right, so let me just share my screen here. Can everybody see my presentation? Doesn't look like it. Is it just my background? All right, don't worry. We'll get this. There we go. Okay, cool. So I'm going to talk today about how our demand gen engine is delivering $10 of pipeline to every $1 of spend using a mix of channels. Now, I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of the channels, of course, but I also want to share that the channels don't really matter. What I want to talk about is how the channels are just your competitive advantage. So we're going to get into it. I know I only have 20 minutes, so I'm going to talk super fast. So I am the director of demand gen. I was also the head of marketing at Map My Customers, a Series A startup. Before that, I was a senior strategist at Gorilla 76, which is a marketing agency that specializes in mid-market industrial and manufacturing companies. And before that, I was a lowly marketing specialist at an OEM manufacturer called Spraying Systems. So I have spent the majority of my career in very conservative spaces, namely industrial and manufacturing. So I have Buster Rhymes on here because I want to talk very quickly so that I can get to and answer questions, which is really the fun part of being at a live event. So what I'm going to talk about today is the one big mindset shift that got our demand gen machine to finally be delivering that $10 of pipeline to every $1 of spend. I'm going to talk about channel execution, so how we actually did that. And then I'm going to talk how I do reporting, measurement, and optimization. Cool. So first thing, I love that Eric kind of made me do this, which is prove it. So how exactly are we getting $10 of pipe to every $1 of spend? So these are actual real numbers. This is really what our channels are producing as of last month. And these are real. Obviously, I can't give you real pipeline dollars or I'm going to get fired. So you're just going to have to trust me that this is an actual screenshot of our pipeline from Q1 of this year to Q3 of this year. And this is only demand gen. So this is not like all of our pipeline all mixed together. This is just demand gen pipeline. Okay, so what was that big mindset shift? Like what needed to change at CoLab and really I think across demand gen in general? So what we did is we did not maximize for leads. So our demand gen machine, the goal is not generating leads. The number one goal is maximizing for message distribution. And that allows us to optimize for better leads. So what does that even mean? Like, how can you say that and like not explain it? This is exactly what it means. So I start every single report with this slide. So what this means is we guarantee message distribution to the right people. So people who fit our ICP. We want them to see our message as often as possible. So they go to our website, find the information they need, and book a demo. And this funnel makes it really easy for us to identify bottlenecks in both the entire demand gen engine and also at the channel and campaign level. And I'll get into a little bit how we do that at the channel level. Okay, so let's actually talk channels. So the first thing we did, the first experiment we ran in Q3, Q4-ish was splashy ads in boring industry newsletters. Now, again, what I don't want you to take away from this is, oh, well, we should just go find every single newsletter in our industry and create super fun ads. You can do that, but really the cool thing about this is that we found an unfair competitive advantage. So like I said, I come from the industrial and manufacturing space. Our product is sold into the industrial and manufacturing space. It's very conservative. And honestly, the bar for good marketing is just really, really low. So we found a few industry newsletters where they're doing like ads, like really bad. I'll show you some examples. And we decided we are going to go out this hard. We are going to use a structured experiment, which I will also talk about. Most of our experiments are structured in 90-day cycles. So I'll have a hypothesis, we have KPIs, and we have a strategy for each of those experiments. Okay, what does that mean? Like, what does it mean for us to actually execute at the channel level? So this is exactly what I'm talking about. So a lot of these industry newsletters had stock ads, they're using big words, the copy is really bad. So it was just really easy for us to say, hey, we could do this. We could totally outperform just by creating better ads with clearer copy. So what did that actually look like? This is actual screenshots of our ads in industry newsletters. So we wanted to do something, number one, that was a little bit splashier. Number two, that was custom. So you can kind of see that these are clearly not stock ads. And we saw leads from this almost immediately. So I will talk a little bit about that, but I just want you guys to see what this actually looks like at the execution level. Okay, so let's talk about LinkedIn next. So again, we're still in channel execution. So the point of our paid motion in LinkedIn is not to maximize, again, for cost per click, cost per lead, especially not at the platform level. The point of our paid advertising strategy is guaranteed message distribution to our ICP in the places where they spend time. And this is a screenshot of a post where I definitely got called stupid quite a bit and the worst marketer in the world because we don't do any retargeting, which is hilarious. But this is literally how our campaign is still set up to this day. So you can see this is 3 months ago. This is still how our campaign is set up almost exactly. So we only have 4 campaigns running. We have 2 thought leadership campaigns. We have 1 product education, and we have 1 lead gen campaign. We only have 1 audience, which is why we don't do retargeting. We only run 3 to 4 ads at a given time. And when we do experiments, they are big experiments. So we do creative refreshes in LinkedIn probably every 6 to 8 weeks, and we will do a complete overhaul. So we will double down on any ads where we see outsized results, but anything that did not perform well in that 6 to 8 week period, we will kill it and just try something completely new and different. Now, I talked a little bit about the bottleneck strategy. So this is how I talk about bottlenecks at the channel level. So I mentioned YouTube. We do advertise in YouTube. We are very new to it, but we're already seeing some really positive signals from it. But this is how I talk to my CMO about the bottlenecks I'm seeing and how and why we're going to run the next series of experiments that we're going to run. So this is a really good one. Right people. For LinkedIn, this is usually green because I get to target based on job title, industry, all that good stuff. YouTube targeting, pretty much the opposite. So you get to target on almost nothing, which is really, really difficult. And that's why this is yellow here. We had some form fills. Most of them were a little bit low quality. We had some pretty good ones, but that's why we have yellow here because we're like, we can't really see the targeting. We're getting some form fills. Some form fills are good. Some form fills are bad. So, this is kind of a yellow right now. Now, as often as possible, this is really interesting. The channel or the audience sizes in YouTube are usually really large. So it's really hard to hit frequency in YouTube without spending a ton of money. So we're kind of okay that this is in the red for now because this is just an experiment. Okay. Objective of YouTube campaign is go to our website. We have lots of website visits. This is in the green. Yay. We are not sure if they're finding the info they need because we don't really have a ton of people filling out the demo compared to the amount of web traffic we're getting. So that's why I put these in red. Now, normally in a channel where we have an established motion like LinkedIn, most of these are green. And I might have 1 or 2 that are red or yellow, and then my CMO and I can talk about it. For something like this actually isn't a bad place to start at a channel experiment level because we can say, hey, look, this is just an experiment. We at least know one thing is good, and it allows me to pick the next bottleneck to optimize for. So it makes it really easy to say, okay, do we want to spend more so that they can see us more? Do we want to optimize the landing page? Or do we want to optimize maybe a lower intent offer to get some more form fills and see if people are actually, consuming the information we have and the message is resonating? Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about reporting at a deeper level. So what we do is I do a weekly report and a monthly report. My weekly report is based on channel level and campaign level, and I will surface any small observations I'm seeing. A really great example is, not surprisingly, we're heading into the holiday season. So like really basic demo form fills are a little bit down over the last week. So I might just flag that, hey, just wanted to let you know, CMO, our S0 leads are a little down for the week. No big deal. But then when we get to the monthly meetings, that's when I'm doing something bigger. So I'm reporting much deeper at the channel level, not necessarily the campaign level. And I'm surfacing bigger observations, bigger analyses, and then next steps. Okay, so what am I seeing and what am I recommending as the director of demand gen that we do to either solve or scale? All right, so I wanted you guys to get an example of what this looked like. These are all made up numbers, so just so you guys know. But this is how we decide how we're going to run an experiment. So I use the newsletters experiment as an example. We had 6 newsletters that we were vetting as potential outlets. So these newsletters will give us subscriber rate, open rate, how much we can spend with them, how many sends we get, et cetera, et cetera. So what we did, and this is really fun, is we decided what's going to be our reach per spend. So how many people are we actually going to reach with our message? Because again, number one goal of demand gen is message distribution, not leads. So how many people are we actually going to reach with each send? And how much is it going to cost us to reach them? The CPM metric is actually a fun one. I don't think people pay enough attention to this when they're doing experiments because it allows us to say, okay, let's see this one, for instance. We have a CPM of $54 and it's the highest reach. This is an easy yes for us. We're like, okay, great. We're going to reach a ton of people with our message and the CPM is lower than average. That's great. Now, when we come down here, maybe this one is a little bit higher. Okay, we only can reach maybe, 4,900 people, not as great, but maybe this outlet has like the exact perfect amount of ICP people in it. So maybe we'll decide to do that. This numbers, so kind of laying out the experiments like this allows you to make those strategic decisions. So that's why I wanted to share this with you guys. And then this allows us to choose. Then as we run the test, these are the metrics I'm reporting to my CMO on. So every week and every month, I'm saying, okay, here's our spend, here's how many sends we're doing, here's our SQLs, here's our opportunities, here's the cost for all that, so that we can start to surface those bigger observations and say, hey, maybe if spend to pipeline was at $5 after 60 days, it's like, hey, maybe this really isn't the right motion for us and we should kill it. So that's why this type of reporting view allows us to make those greater strategic questions about like which channels we want to be on and why. Cool. All right, so what do those monthly reports look like? Because like, what does it look like to report at the channel level? So here's how I report. Again, these are all made up metrics, but this is what it would look like. So I have LinkedIn, newsletters, and YouTube. I'm telling you how many people we're reaching with our message, how much it's costing us, audience penetration, all that good stuff. And the purpose of this is these next three things, which is what are my observations? What are my recommendations? And what are my next steps? So this is like so important because I think a lot of demand gen marketers might stop at observations or observations and recommendations. What I will do is say, here's my observations, here's my recommendations. And if you decide to say yes to these recommendations, here's exactly what it would look like. And what I call that is just like, make it easy to say yes or no. If it's no, totally fine. But in most cases, if you're willing to put in the work to do these three things on a monthly level, your CMO is usually going to say yes. Okay, want to wrap up so we can get to questions. So big thing here, mindset shift. We are maximizing for message distribution so we can optimize for leads. We are in 3 core channels. Again, these channels should just be where are your competitive advantages? All of these channels are focused on message distribution first, leads second. And then we do a unified measurement metric. So we want to make sure every single channel, and sometimes at the campaign level, we will run through that big funnel so that we can identify our bottlenecks. And remember, at the end of the day, you got hired for a reason. You are the marketer. So you have very important observations and recommendations to make, and you should always try to make them. And anything you need, tour guide, lunch date, shoulder to cry on, please find me in Demand Collective. More than happy to answer any questions that don't get answered today in there.
Mary, amazing. This is awesome. I just want to reiterate the channel execution, like you said, is interesting, but the real takeaway for me is the mindset shift, which is we don't maximize for leads, we maximize for message distribution so we can optimize for better leads. And that's the foundation, which is like get the team on board with that. And then once everyone's on board with that, then that funnel that you presented, which is the right people as often as possible. So they go to your website, find the info they need and book a demo, makes sense because that fits into that mindset. And then those reports you shared, the metrics you look at tie into each of those phases. So like you're looking at audience penetration and frequency because You want to see, are we getting the right people as often as possible? And then you're looking at website traffic and demos. So like it all fits together so well. So I think there's a lot we can all take away of just, even if we don't have that same structure, just thinking through like what's our kind of point of view on like how we do marketing, and reporting, and getting the rest of the team on board with some like a written down framework like this. Okay, we have a couple minutes and maybe you want to answer questions.
Okay, cool. Mary, what metrics do you show execs, especially when they ask about your impact on closed deals? This is a great one. We sell to the enterprise and we have very long sales cycles. So if you go to CoLab's website, you'll see a bunch of big, impressive logos, and they are big, impressive companies. And as big, impressive manufacturing conservative companies, they are very resistant to change. And so the sales cycles are just insanely long. So we actually don't report on closed won revenue that frequently, because it's not an important metric for the marketing team. Now, I've been on other teams where that's not true. So at CoLab, the reason I'm harping so much on our pipeline numbers is that's the ultimate number I'm measured on, and marketing is measured on at the end of the day. Now, I have been at previous jobs where I've had to explain my impact on closed deals, and I do it at the channel source level. So I do not do it at the campaign level. I think that makes for bad habits, because then execs continue to ask, why did this campaign, let's say you're running 4 campaigns in LinkedIn, why did this campaign not do any leads, but this campaign did? Bad habit. So I only report on closed won at the channel level. Okay, cool. How do you think about getting the most success out of your thought leadership campaigns? Great question. So we just started doing thought leadership campaigns maybe 8 months ago. They've been incredibly successful because we broke down our CEO's LinkedIn as its own channel source detail. So we have LinkedIn, and then we have Adam Keating, who's our CEO's LinkedIn. So that allows us to say, hey, this deal, of course, it's a little bit of correlation equals causation, which we're very comfortable with. So we can say, yep, this deal came from Adam Keating and is likely attributed to a thought leadership campaign. Okay, do you track events separately, or does this follow the same reporting? Events are separate. I, as a director of demand gen, only do digital channels. We have separate conference channels, but it does follow the same reporting. Obviously, some of the stuff like reach and frequency won't apply to events, but we still do like the cost per SQL, we do cost per opportunity, we do pipeline. Okay. Oh, hey, from Virginia. Nice to see you. I'm from North Carolina. How do you get the metric of audience penetration? LinkedIn has it in there, so that makes it super easy. As far as YouTube, what we do is calculate the estimated audience size and then divide it by the reach. Pretty easy. I'll do one more, Eric, and then I know I'm out of time. You mentioned this is just demand gen channels. Oh, I already answered this one. Great. Yes, events and field look a little bit differently, but reporting looks very similar.
Okay, Mary, I know
Cool,
where
no problem.
I really want to hear your answer to this one. After optimizing for distribution, which you can do through audience penetration and frequency, how do you then optimize for better leads? Is this related to the bottleneck analysis?
Yes, it is. So this is like the hardest thing for executives to understand, but they just kind of have to trust you for a little bit in this shift. So by optimizing for distribution, you just naturally get better fit leads. And the way that you explain it is LinkedIn's the easiest channel to explain this. You have this perfect audience. Here's my exact ICP. Why would we not want to hit as many people in here as possible with our ads? That's the number one goal. Let's hit all of these people with a message that we know works, and then follow that down at the channel level. So we do last touch and how did you hear about us? And then yes, as far as like the channel level, that's how we find bottlenecks. So if the message isn't working, we'll work back from the top. Are we hitting the right people? Are we hitting them at a good frequency? Are they going to the website? Are they consuming the message? Are they booking a demo? I hope that was helpful.
Sweet. Cool. If you guys have other questions, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A. I'm sure Mary's down to stay a couple minutes over and answer in text.
Yeah, we'll do.
I'll just say about that point, I think the beauty of your framework here is like you're doing these monthly deep dives where you're like using your brain as a marketer. And you're
Yes.
like, you don't need the framework to be perfect. You just need to like every month go in and then use your brain and be like, okay, we're getting leads from this, but they're not high quality. Maybe that's a targeting issue. Or you're like, okay, this isn't converting. I wonder what it is. And just like talk to customers, use your brain, talk to other people. And then it's just a forcing mechanism to like figure that out and then package it up into takeaways you can share with the board, which this bottleneck analysis helps you do that quickly. So I think that's really cool. All right. Thanks so much, Mary. This is great. All right. So next up, we have a session I'm very, very excited for. See a lot of talk about ABM on LinkedIn. I run a community of demand gen marketers. I used to work at a company that sells an ABM tool. I didn't really know what ABM meant for years, honestly, because there are so many different variations and it's just really hard to understand what it actually is. Isaac solves that because he gives us a very tactical, specific example of how he's doing ABM and doing it really, really, really well. Which is that he's converting 15% of his target accounts into an opportunity. So like imagine you get a list of 15 or a list of 100 target accounts and you can consistently convert 15 of them into opportunities. That's the machine that Isaac's going to share, which I'm really excited about. Real quick, before we do that, like I said, the only reason these events are possible is because we have amazing sponsors like Primer and Customer IO. I'm gonna drop a quick poll. If you're too lazy to go to the website, just drop an answer to the poll if you're interested in either of those tools, and I can follow up. So that, like I said, we can keep getting sponsors for this awesome community. We can keep getting people like Isaac to come on and share his awesome playbooks with us.
Awesome. I'm
All
excited.
right, Isaac, let's see
Yeah.
it.
I'm excited to dive in. Mary's a tough act to follow. She's great. But hopefully we'll get some stuff out of this. I'll dive right in and kind of show you what we're doing over here at UserGems. Let me share my screen real quick. Awesome. So again, Isaac Ware, Senior Director of Demand and ABM at UserGems. We're going to be going through exactly how we are converting 12 to 15% of our target accounts into sales accepted opportunities with our ABM playbook. This is going to be going over how to do this and build your MVP without buying a $300,000 tool. A big piece of my job, how it's evolved over the years, is I was hired on 4 years ago by UserGems to build out ABM and demand and paid. And now my job, heavily about half my time, is spent talking with customers and potential customers about their ABM programs, identifying where they're broken, and helping them fix their ABM programs. Before we get into the tactical bit on how to actually execute this program, I want to go into why I'm seeing most ABM programs fail before we get into anything else. These are things that I hear over and over again on my calls every single week. The first one is relying on a tool to do ABM for you. And this kind of goes back to the core principle of what ABM is. It's aligning the sales team, it's aligning the marketing team around a group of customers, or a group of accounts. That is it at its core, and no platform can do all of that for you. So really, I advocate for a lot of people to actually launch their own MVP before they ever talk to somebody about an external hire or a consultant or anything like that. Start an MVP and kind of get the lay of the land of how you want to approach it at your company before you dive into that. The second piece is alignment with your SDRs. Again, ABM is not just advertising. And a big piece of why our program works is because how we are selecting accounts and how we are working with our reps to actually work those accounts. The third one is account selection solely off of firmographics or intent. UserGems even offers contact level intent, and I don't recommend anybody ever start with just intent. It's kind of it's a terrible starting spot. It can be kind of looped into scoring later on, but never start with that, and never build a program around intent on its own. And the last piece before we dive into it is the overcomplication of early programs. Again, get back to the basics, really simplify it, kind of fill out those three things of like what's marketing's piece, what's sales piece, and how are we selecting these accounts. that's the overall gist of the problems. Before we get in, just had to get those out of the way. And we'll dive into this piece now. So about the UserGems ABM program. So about 5 years ago, we started this, and it was our MVP. We started around 10 to 15 accounts. We were doing one-to-one advertising combined with outbound. And now this program has evolved into 600 accounts, one-to-one advertising every single month. We convert 12 to 15% of all of those accounts to sales accepted opportunities. And that accounts for about 37% of our closed one revenue last year. It's shaping up to be over 40% of our closed one revenue this year. This program includes one-to-one ABM, one-to-many. But one of the other pieces that I'm going to go over as well is contact-based marketing around those signals that we're using to select accounts. And I'll dive into what I mean by that here. This is a lot to look at. So I'm going to break this down because this is just how I view signal-based marketing in general. But when you get down to the core principles, this is going to be what you're building out over time when you're building from MVP to a fully scaled ABM program. We view every single layer of these as an individual signal. For us, this is past champions, new hires, promotions, things like that. But this can also be things like de-anonymized website visitors, custom signals like, did they attend the same event as you? This will vary company to company. And the biggest piece here is to talk with your sales reps, talk with customer success about what they see in the most successful customers and what the reps see in the most successful opportunities are to book these demos. That's where you're going to find your core signals. I know Mason and everybody else has other places they look for these signals, but this is just kind of the framework of how to bake those signals and selection criteria into your program. Every single one of these signals has an outbound element, so a sales element right here. And for us, again, ABM isn't just advertising, but we run LinkedIn ads to all of these individual signals as well. So that's the contact-based marketing. And then we roll all of these into how we select accounts for our ABM program. Again, these are going to be wildly different depending on what your company is. But the goal here is to pick your accounts how a top 1% BDR would pick an account. For a lot of people, what I recommend is start with closed lost opportunities. Find those old closed lost opportunities to identify those accounts. Find those events where specific contacts were at. Maybe it's a webinar, maybe it's an in-person event. Start finding those reasons to engage that your reps are already using and use that to select accounts and contacts for your MVP program for your ABM. For us, we look a lot at closed one op contacts from other accounts. We look at previous users. Again, this account was at the SDR Leaders event. They were attendees there. They have a product announcement. They have the Revive Close Loss opportunity. Your goal when you get done selecting your first batch of accounts based off of reasons like this is you're able to pass them over to a BDR and your BDR says, wow, that's exactly how I would have picked that account. That should be the end goal with how you're approaching this program. Taking this a step further to get that sales buy-in is actually helping them template their outbound based off of those signals. So for a first program that I recommend for a lot of people, you have those Revive Close Lost opportunities. You might have a past champion that CS has identified. Maybe you used another tool like a Clay or something like that to help find some of these smaller signals. Build those templates for them. One of the biggest reasons I keep seeing people fail at ABM is because the reps don't do any of the work on their side to actually action these accounts. So then you just end up with very well-targeted marketing and no sales side, and you just end up with something that actually isn't ABM. So for example, this one, if we were targeting people or accounts that had past champions and that had previous closed lost opportunities, I'd build out the template like this, where we're saying, thanks for bringing UserGems to Clary back in the day, that classic one-liner to open that email up. And then what we're doing as well is actually saying, hey, John Snow from your marketing team checked us out last year. Perhaps you want to get his take. This is huge in these first ABM programs to get those emails out in a way that feels very human and researched and starts a conversation without begging for the demo request. So write these out for your reps. We have some templates actually live on the UserGems site. If you just want to steal how we approach outbound, I would recommend doing that so you don't get stuck writing emails all day. This is our approach on the outbound side of things. For the advertising piece, I know personalization is a huge discussion topic, and everybody has different opinions and success stories with it and everything. This is the extent to which we actually personalize on the advertising side of things. Over the past 5 years, we've tested personalizing landing pages. We've tested personalizing these ads that actually show every single reason we selected the account, including headshots of past champions and new hires and everything across the board. To varying levels of bandwidth used and hours spent doing tedious work. And we've actually never seen a lift in conversion to sales accepted opportunity by doing a lot of those personalization things. Again, we're selling heavily into sales and marketing, so the gimmick might have worn off on them in some ways. But our goal with personalization, and what I recommend for a lot of MVPs, is get the scroll stop. That should be the level of personalization in your first iteration of this program, is find a way to get them to stop scrolling and then rely heavily on how you selected that account to actually make the program successful. Over the past 5 years, we leaned heavily on personalization, saw a lot of success during the free money years of 2020-ish. That dipped over time, and the lever we pulled to actually get this back up was actually keeping the personalization the same, but changing how we selected the accounts to what I included above in those previous slides. So with this, you are brute forcing some of the awareness stage. So keep the messaging very plain, very clear, because this might be their first interaction with your brand, rather than more traditional funnel that they've gone through of thought leadership ads and more awareness ads and everything like that. A lot of people will convert directly off of these for us, so we need to make sure it's very clear what we're doing on this side.
Wait, sorry, real quick, Isaac, I want to touch on that, which is the one-on-one ads for you are working, and B, if you want to get started, it's not like you need a super complicated or highfalutin tool. You just like get a Canva, get a template, hire a VA off Upwork, and just like create the ads, and then
that is a point I need to hit on. Is this whole program, actually, I should have said this at the very beginning. This whole program is run with one person. I used to run this program. She runs it now. She also manages all of our paid media. She manages the whole 600 one-to-one ABM program, all the one-to-many, and all the stuff that I'm going to show you next. We use virtual assistants for creating the ads. We have one VA we've worked with for years. He can crank out 3,000 ads in 24 hours that are all personalized to accounts. And we have another VA that stands up the actual individual campaigns. So for us, what we're doing on the campaign side is we build a template campaign. We put those, we target at the account level. We start as narrowed as possible. We expand it till we hit that 300 minimum threshold. If you can't hit that 300 minimum threshold, use a filler account like a plumbing company or an HVAC company, because they don't get on LinkedIn. And if they do, they have no idea what the hell is going on if they received this snowflake ad. So it's a good way to kind of boost those, especially if you're going SMB mid-market. A lot of those accounts haven't received one-to-one advertising. So the novelty of one-to-one advertising hasn't been wasted on them. So they respond really well to advertising like this. So it's a good place to start. Thanks for calling that out, Eric. Going a touch further, so if we think about that layer cake approach that I showed you at the very beginning, where we'll just go back to it, where we have all of these signals lined up. We have the outbound piece, and then we have the LinkedIn ads piece. This is outside of the ABM program, and it's more contact-based marketing, signal-based marketing. And what our goal is with this is to take all of the contacts that share that signal. Maybe that is the revive, close, lost contacts from all of your previous opportunities. Maybe it is de-anonymized website visitors. Maybe it is previous champions. And what we're doing with that is actually advertising to them in groups. So your reps are outbounding these on their side. Let them do that. Help them out with that if they need help with that. A lot of marketing teams and demand gen teams will actually help their sales team stand up these programs on the outbound side. But on the advertising side of things, what we're doing is we're saying, hey, I want all of the previous champions. I'm putting those in a Salesforce report. We're pushing it through UserGems, however you want to do the audience piece of it. We're taking those, grouping them all together. They all have that common signal, and we push those into LinkedIn ads. So for us, we're saying, hey, congrats on the new role. You generated a ton of pipeline with UserGems in the past. We're serving up a checklist for their first 90 days in whatever role they fell into. Make them feel comfortable. Stay in front of them. When they're ready to convert, they'll either convert here or on the outbound side of things. So it's kind of a 2 + 2 = 5 situation. This can be run too with the new hires and promotions, we source that data. You can use LinkedIn ads to actually source this data as a criteria in your audience building with that campaign of congrats on the new role, make them feel comfortable in there, be really targeted with how you're messaging these people and actually call out the signal when possible. One of the next ones I'll show is actually more of like competitor intent. And this doesn't always have to be using an intent tool. And I usually recommend not using an intent tool to do some of this intent. You can manually find these on LinkedIn. You can use Clay. You can use GPT to actually find a lot of these signals. So for us, one of ours is Clay. We sell really well against them in some situations. So what we're doing is actually using those groups of contacts that are researching it. They've been to maybe our competitor page already, things like that. And we're serving ads that stand out and again, call out the signal directly. So UserGems is easier in Clay, why you should choose Clay. In these ads, we're actually using screenshots from Clay employees and Clay agencies to actually speak to the points where they might be better or we might be better in certain situations. Get creative with this, and I would say too, whatever page you direct this to, make sure it's honest, because nobody hates a inaccurate competitive page more than a marketer. So yeah. The last one I'll go into on the contact or signal-based advertising piece is actually multi-threading through marketing. Your AEs, again, have all of these contacts sitting in their open opportunities. Hopefully your reps are adding those contacts to your CRM, but you can advertise against these. And we've actually run a split test against our entire CRM to multi-thread these opportunities. So what we did is we broke all of our reports into sales, marketing, RevOps personas. So we can push these into LinkedIn saying, hey, sales, hey, marketing, hey, RevOps, your team is talking with us about X. Do you want to join the next conversation? The split test was about 8 months. We saw higher win rates on these ops, bigger deal sizes, more prospects involved in the deals, shorter sales cycles. Really good starting spot to actually get buy-in from your AEs on the marketing side of things. A lot of AEs aren't really thrilled with marketing a lot of the time anyways. So the more you can actually step in, it helps them out on their side, builds that relationship, and then also helps accelerate those deals, gets you bigger deal sizes, etc. Going over the measurement side of things, I'm notoriously simple when it comes to measuring an attribution. And that's usually what I push for a lot of people building out their first program. To be completely honest, you should probably be a little bit more advanced on the measurement side than I am once you've scaled to this program or to this size of the program. But if something's working, you get a lot less eyes on how it's working. So how we run it at UserGems, again, we track a lot of stuff beyond there once it enters into the sales cycle. But what we're doing, and usually what I recommend, is track this in your CRM by tagging every single account by how they were selected and the time in which you targeted them for ABM. So this was a Q2 example here. This theme for this quarter, because we do want to be tracking those themes and how they convert versus other quarters, is mostly revive closed lost accounts. We targeted some event attendee accounts, and we scored all of these other accounts with signals to select these accounts. Tag them in your Salesforce, build a report showing all of those accounts and convert and track the conversion to sales accepted opportunity. That is the extent that I recommend at the beginning, because your goal with this first program is to get buy-in from your reps and get buy-in from leadership. Leadership cares about pipeline generated, conversion to op. Your reps care about being bought into the program and not having marketing fight over who generated what. So when you first stand up this program, I usually recommend people to pay out your reps on every single opportunity created, regardless of channel. Your reps are putting in the work on the outbound side of things. A lot of the times we'll hear people say in the how you heard about UserGems field that they saw an ad, but then when we actually track it, they actually converted through an email. So either way, you're not ever going to get 100% accurate attribution anyways. So default towards getting sales buy-in, being on the same team, and getting this program built out in a healthy way. As a recap, select your accounts based off of their contact signals or based off of account level signals that your reps are actually interested in working, like the revive close lost or website visits, things like that. You're not going to get there by passing them surging accounts or high intent accounts. Your rep has never wanted to get a get Cisco assigned to them, and marketing says it's a hot lead, and now they have to dig through 10,000 contacts to find out who's actually causing that high intent. I think Vector did a study, and it was like 90% of high intent accounts actually came from a single contact anyways. So intent for the most part, your reps don't want to work accounts off that. So you can save the money on buying a $200,000 intent tool or ABM platform. Align with your SDRs and do that work for them at the start. It sucks, but the more you can be involved in getting this program built, doing stuff that's cognitively kind for them, building those email templates, helping them work through how you selected the accounts, working with them on how they're selecting accounts, the better success you'll see from your program. And I see it time and time again. Surround the contacts and accounts with outbound, and I would even change this from ads to marketing. I just had a call yesterday with somebody who they work in the trucking industry. Ads are not going to be their channel, but they can still run ABM. So they're working with events and dinners. They're using their reps on the sales side to help pull people in to select or pull people into events. After the events, they're doing a gifting and outreach program from the sales side. The marketing touch is that event. So ABM doesn't always have to add the ads piece. Keep it simple before scaling. This is the biggest piece. If people get overwhelmed before they even start programs because of how overwhelming ABM as a concept has been presented. A lot of ABM people have overcomplicated ABM to make themselves look better, in my opinion. And I don't think it needs to be that complicated. So start very simple. Work with your reps on how to select those accounts, work with your reps on how you're working those accounts, and keep the marketing side very, very simple to start. You don't have to reinvent the wheel with this one. So yeah. Any questions? Anything I can expand on for you, Eric, too?
I just want to say, like, this is a crazy time we live in. Like, those ads were nuts, and the level of personalization that you can do, it's just kind of, for me, like a frame shift of just thinking from first principles, like what is the best ad we could show someone, and then how can we work backwards from that? And like given LinkedIn, especially in the targeting capabilities, and especially that hack that you shared about, like it can be less than 300 as the audience size, and then you fluff it out with people from HVAC companies who are never gonna get shown ads on LinkedIn. That's like, we can do so many cool things with that as marketers, like the air cover to open ops, beautiful, the close loss, like all that stuff is really good. So I think that's the main takeaway is like, wow, what a cool time. Super interesting. Yeah, I think so I'm going to do the same thing here, Isaac, which is I'm going to force you to come on to do a Q&A with Demand Collective. We can go in deeply into your ads, which ads are actually working, and talk with members about like their own ad strategies and maybe which of these signal-based ad campaigns they want to start with. So we'll do that in Demand Collective. You guys should all apply to join the community if you want to be a part of that. But I want to ask Rachel's question, which is like, I don't know which one is working the best. I'm sure there's an 80-20 here.
Yeah. This one for the longest time was actually one of the most simple ads, and it was actually one that just said like, "Hey, I'm Jemmy, your AI outbound agent." That one was like absolutely cranking for the longest time, and then it tanked. So this is one of the reasons we run 5 every single month to each campaign, and we usually pull 2 winners and put 3 new ones in. So it's just kind of that like constant improvement of that. And with, especially on the category we're in with like AI for ABM, AI for outbound, it's always changing to some insane degree. So we constantly have winners turn into absolute losers month to month. So yeah, it's great. Learning more about the process with your VA. This one, we use Canva on that side. We build out a template with them. We build out the account list by just exporting our Salesforce report based off the accounts we selected and tagged. That includes their website domain. So we pass it over to him, and I'm assuming is now probably using some AI to help get those logos. But the human element of checking those logos in the creative is actually really important. One of the reasons I'll actually use this to answer the one above this of getting in trouble for using account logos. Usually 1 out of 1,000 accounts, we get somebody who will send an angry message that we use their logo in the ad. It's usually not a marketer that does it. It's usually somebody else on the team. just got really, really upset about it. The thing we actually hear more often than that is actually if we use like a slightly outdated logo in the creative, we'll usually hear more about that than we will about using the logo in the ad creative. So usually not too concerned about using those. Again, over the years, we've targeted tens of thousands of accounts and never gotten in actual legal trouble with using the logo.
Okay, selfish question real quick. Like
Yeah.
bidding strategy for these
Yes.
smaller campaigns, anything unique there?
Yeah, we find a lot of luck in setting your daily budget to your CPM. So that's the bidding strategy we use on our side. They will never spend their full daily budget using that a lot of the time because the CPM is so far below what is recommended for those accounts. But we usually get a frequency of 3 to 4 on these while only spending a few bucks. My ad cost per sales accepted op last or 2 months ago, I need to measure it for last month, was around $280. So really cheap on the ad spend side. Targeting 600 accounts usually costs us 13,000 to 15,000, and that's 600 accounts. So our ROI on this program is huge.
Wait, what do you mean the bit? So what is that? So
Yes.
you set the budget to the CPM of just like
Yes.
historical CPM or the LinkedIn record?
Yeah, so we set the daily and the CPM to, for us, that's $25. We don't necessarily know exactly why it works, but it does for us in our industry and who we're targeting. It'll usually only spend $5 to $10 a day on one of those campaigns instead of the full 25, just because the CPM or you're bidding on that cost per 1,000 impressions is so much lower than our typical like 100-ish plus CPM that we see on our traditional top of funnel ads.
Wow, interesting. I wonder why that is, because I'm assuming
LinkedIn hasn't been able to answer that one for us either. So yeah.
Well, great hacks.
Yeah.
Let's go. You're sharing the secret sauce with Demand Collective. I love it. Sweet. Any other questions for Isaac?
The one for closed lost ops, do you further segment them by lost reason? I find pricing is a tricky one to include. How do you guys do it? We do a few different ones. So for us on the outbound side, we'll segment by that closed lost reason. One of the other reasons we'll do it is by if your product has evolved a ton in the past X amount of time, then we'll segment by that. So like for us, from March 2023 to December 2024, our product was very heavily focused around just champions instead of AI for outbound, AI for ABM. So all of our messaging for that segment of time was refreshing people on what UserGems is now versus what they knew UserGems for. That's where you'll see like a lot of accounts. And again, like we had 492 ops from that time period that was revive, close, lost. So we were able to push all our messaging around what we are now. And the ads were also personalized to that as well.
Love it. All right. Thanks so much, Isaac. This was amazing.
Absolutely. I'll talk to y'all in the Demand Gen Collective channel.
Thank you.
Awesome. We'll see y'all.
All right. You guys hear that? What is that? What is that? I don't know what that is. It's a gear change, baby. It's a gear change. We're changing gears. We just went deep into the weeds with Isaac about tactics, about how to set your CPMs for LinkedIn ads and build your audiences and use VAs to do personalized ads and all that stuff. We were deep in the tactics. Now we're elevating up to talk about something that demand gen marketers I think love and can always get benefit from, which is dialing in our messaging and just doing messaging better. So I was really excited about this one. I reached out to Jared. I was like, yeah, I'm not sure if he's going to respond, but hopefully he'll be down to share his learnings with us. He's a 3-time CMO, and I read his newsletter. It's really, really good. And it's all about like, I would call you like a madman marketer, like just really, really good at the messaging and the creative, which is a place where we can all benefit from. So you're going to be sharing what you call the Gobbledy Trap, which is the trap that a lot of B2B teams fall into. Everyone here, I'm sure, is familiar with it if you've been marketed to or you do your own marketing. And then real examples of companies doing messaging better. So Jared, thank you so much for joining, and I will give you the stage.
Thanks, Eric. And I mean, you reached out with personalized outreach. How would I not respond? Obviously, right? I mean, I assume it was AI created. All right, so it sounded a little weird when I'm talking to a group of people and I can't see them. I'm used to them not listening to me, but also not seeing is a little weird. So yeah, we got 20 minutes. Let's go. I love talking about messaging, and I love talking about positioning and copy, and that's what we're going to talk about. So I've split my career between being on the customer side of things, and I worked for Tommy Hilfiger for ages, then decided to torture myself and work in marketing for software companies. And one of the things that was super striking to me was that there is this weird language on all software company homepages that I call Gobbledy. It is when you go to any software company, almost any software company's website, and you're like, I don't understand. I read all of this stuff and I don't understand a word of it. That's Gobbledy. And so there's a way to avoid that. And I want to talk about how we get there. And then I'm going to share a whole bunch of examples that you can steal to improve your own copy. So we're going to talk about Gobbledy. We're going to talk about positioning and some copy ideas. And so I spend my time now working with software companies on their messaging. So happy to talk about that. I write the newsletter that Eric mentioned called Gobbledy. It's gobbledy.substack.com. Every Wednesday, I just talk about messaging because I think it's super interesting. All right. So Gobbledy is the shortcut language that's used often in software marketing to convey seriousness while saying nothing. You may have seen websites that look like this, where it says it's deliver personalized commerce everywhere through hyper-relevant omni-channel experiences, convert more customers, higher value, every engagement, personal and shoppable. And those are all words people use on websites that don't actually mean anything. Here's another one from NetScout. It's unstoppable visibility for your unstoppable enterprise. It's a communication service and the world's essential organizations, and digital transformation is a must, and availability at an unequaled scale. It's like a lot of words, but if I asked you what NetScout does, you'd have no idea. I bring it up because I think that if you saw this in a consumer-facing context, it would seem insane, like Cheerios doesn't have for breakfast-obsessed humans, redefining hunger management solutions through hyper-round whole grain consumables, delivered in concave environment with 5/9 deliciousness, augmented with bovine-based liquid accompaniment, talk to sales. It's really silly when you see it in a B2C context. I promise you it's equally silly in a B2B context. It doesn't have to be this way. This is Indeed. It's a job board. What do? They help all people get jobs. It can be really clear. And I do like to talk about like why you end up with this. And one reason is what I call going on offense versus playing defense. And so defensive messaging is what larger companies, your SAPs and Salesforces of the world often do. And I say it's defensive, meaning they just don't want to scare anyone away. They feel like they are already in the consideration set. And the fear is someone will read something specific and it will upset them and they will lose the deal. Versus companies that are more in a startup environment where they need to go on offense. They need to put a stake in the ground and say, clearly, this is what we are and who we're for. And so what happens, I think, is that in a lot of these sort of defensive postures, you end up trying to say nothing because you're afraid that it will scare everyone away. So I want to talk about the second piece of why this happens, and it is positioning. And if anyone has taken marketing classes in college, you probably talked about positioning and you probably forgot it immediately. For some reason, it is the black sheep of the marketing family. And I feel like it's underappreciated, misunderstood, and it's actually quite clear. Positioning is, where does your product sit in the market? Whom do you define as the competition? How do you compete with them? So where does it sit in the market? Is it upscale, downscale? Are you low price? Who do you define as the competition? Who are your competitors? Because it's not everyone in the market. You have to define who you're competing against specifically. And by what means do you compete? That could be through the channels that you sell in. It can be price, it could be promotion, it can be how you sell, product-led versus enterprise. But you have to make those decisions. And the reason I talk about it is because David Ogilvy, who is the modern father, or the father of modern advertising, was an ad man back when that mattered in the 1950s and 60s, put out this, said this, and I think of it all the time. Positioning should be decided before the advertising is created. And David Ogilvy put out, he had an ad agency called Ogilvy and Mather. He ran an ad in the newspaper about how to work with them, which I thought was very clever. And the first thing he says in this incredibly blurry screenshot that I've shared here is, The most important decision you have when creating advertising is how do you position your product? It depends, your success of your marketing depends on that more than anything else. And this to me was what unlocked the whole idea for me. Should you position Schweppes ginger ale as a soft drink or as a mixer? Meaning, ginger ale can be three things as I think about it. Ginger ale can be a soda like you drink, like you would drink Coca-Cola or Sprite. It can be an alcoholic mixer, or it can be something when your 3-year-old has a stomach ache that you give to them. And if you don't decide which of those three things it is, where are you in the market, and then who do you compete against, your ads will make no sense. You would run an ad for Schweppes in the 1960s, maybe in Playboy or Esquire, if you're making it positioning as a mixer. But if you were positioning it as a product to help your 3-year-old with their stomach, that would be a silly place to advertise. It all starts with positioning. And for whatever reason, most software companies tend to skip over this. Or if you're like me, you'll sit in a workshop for a day where you'll be tortured. It'll be a positioning workshop, and you'll sort of spend a day talking about the specific words about we are a this for that. And at the end of the day, everyone will forget it and you'll never talk about it again. But it is the foundation of marketing. Great. That's all out of the way. So again, my point is, if you start with the positioning, you can get great, clear copy that resonates. And here's a bunch of ideas that you can write down and steal, or I'll send you this deck. Here we go. All right. So I always say the perfect marketing campaign really should only be comprehensible to your target market. If you're specific enough, only your target market will understand it. And there's this ad here, the billboard for Vercel, which is an AI company of some sort. And they wrote this brilliant ad that says triangle squiggly slash NPM IAI square. I don't know what that means because I'm not their target market. I used to have another example that I would share from John Fetterman, who is the senator from Pennsylvania. When he ran for Senate, his campaign sent out an email that said, Sheets greater than sign Wawa. Sheets is a convenience store that is Pennsylvania based. Wawa is a convenience store that is New Jersey based. And his competitor, Dr. Oz, was allegedly living in New Jersey at the time. And I thought that was such a gloriously specific way of telling that story, that if you were not from Pennsylvania, you may have no idea what Sheets means. But when you just see that and you are part of the target market, it resonates in a way. The specificity is what makes it resonate. Don't be afraid to be specific and alienate people who do not fit in your target market. This is called It Does What It Says on the Tin. What great positioning can do for you. There was a product in the 1980s and 90s in England called Ron Seal's, I think it's Ron Seal, Ron Seal's long-lasting wood stain. And they ran an ad that said, Ron Seal's long-lasting wood stain, it does what it says on the tin, meaning it's a long-lasting wood stain. And I love this example for O'Keeffe's Working Hands hand cream for extremely dry, cracked hands. It does what it says on the tin. And if you think back to the positioning question before of like, well, your hand cream can be for soft hands, it can be for dry hands, it can be for cracked hands, it can be for working people. O'Keeffe said, we're going to go after working people and we're going to be as specific as possible in our naming and in our messaging. And they just spelled it out. It does what it says on the tin. Does what it says on the tin can be a little bit terrifying. Back in the early 1970s, Allstate decided that insurance was a highly regulated industry, and there are only so many ways you can talk about the product, but they decided they were going to be positioned as the life insurance for new dads, so 30-ish-year-old dads. And when they talked to 30-ish-year-old dads, what they learned is the biggest fear of a new father who's 30 is, if God forbid something were to happen to me, what will happen to my kids? And they went on the nose with that. And they said, Allstate Life Insurance says, if you die, your baby is still babied. And the look on the baby's face is like, wait, what was that about dying? It's a great piece of creative. And they ran a whole campaign about this. And it was really shocking. I mean, there's TV commercials you can see on YouTube for this. But if you are a 30-year-old dad, this is an incredibly emotional connection that they're making. And it's hard to even imagine an insurance ad today, which is mostly geckos and emus running around making you laugh, that insurance is about what happens if you die. And they went right on the nose with it. This ran for years. Also terrifying. There's the sell the brownie, not the recipe idea, meaning you should be talking about benefits. You should not be talking about how your product works. This is often hard to achieve in a tech company because oftentimes the founder worked very hard on some sort of technical problem or technical solution, and they may come to you as a marketer or someone in demand gen and say, oh, we should talk about the technical piece. But I always talk about my refrigerator, which works because there's something with Freon running through this thing and it cools this thingity-ding. It's very complicated, but really what I want is my milk not to spoil. The same thing is probably true about your product. I mean, it's all great about whatever's going on in the background, but ultimately you're trying to solve a problem. And brownies are the leading wheat starch-based cocoa treat purpose-built for hunger-focused units. Probably my favorite strategy in messaging is using your shortcoming as a benefit. Your shortcoming is a benefit to someone. So I love this ad from Jay Skis. No normal graphics, 1 star. Seriously, who designs these things? They're way too bright. I don't want my skis to look crazy. Until you make normal skis, I'm shopping elsewhere. And that's what they put in the ad. Because it split the world into people who want normal skis and people who want brightly designed skis. And if you say we are the company that boring people who want boring skis hate, then logically you are the company that people who love fun skis love. I love your shortcoming as a benefit to someone. I tell companies all the time when I'm doing messaging work, go in, get your marketing, demand gen, sales teams together, decide what your worst shortcoming is, and then think about how it's a positive. And I worked for a marketing MarTech company a few years ago. They were very early stage. They're an email tool. They did not have an admin tool for the clients to log in on. If you wanted to make a change or find your analytics, you had to reach out to your CSM, which would seem to be a shortcoming, but they called it white glove service. And so it wasn't a shortcoming, it was a way to have the highest touch customer success possible. Every shortcoming is a benefit to someone. I love this example from Barney Frank, who was a congressman from Massachusetts forever. Before he was a congressman from Massachusetts, he was a state representative. And the knock on Barney Frank was that he was a slob. And so they took that as a positive and said, neatness isn't everything. And their campaign was all about how, you know what, if you want someone who is blow dried and looks great, but will deliver nothing, there's another candidate. But if you want someone who's entirely focused on constituents, I'm your guy. Neatness isn't everything. Your shortcoming is always a benefit. Oops. If you're clear of about what your positioning is, you can come up with amazing messaging like Oatly has. So Oatly is an oat milk, and Oatly had to decide at some point, much like Schweppes, are we as a milk alternative, are we something for people who don't like the taste of milk? Are we a product for vegans? Are we a product for people who are lactose intolerant? Are we an entirely separate product that has nothing to do with milk at all? Oatly decided we are a product, a drink for people who like the taste of oats. That's their positioning. That's where they fit in the market. And I love the copy that they have. This tastes like shit, blah. That's a real comment from a real person who tried one of our oat milks. Some people just don't like it. They think it tastes like oats because it does taste like oats. If you don't like the taste of oat milk, you don't have to drink them. It's personal, which is why we don't take it personal if you don't like how it tastes. It's amazing. But that started with the idea, the positioning insight of the space in the market is for people who like a drink that tastes like oats, not a creamer alternative. Creamer alternative would be a whole different conversation, whole different message. The last one of these. Listerine. So if anyone out there has used Listerine, it tastes terrible. And when Listerine went to market and did focus groups back in the 60s and 70s, the message was always, this stuff tastes terrible. That would, you'd think, be a shortcoming for something that you have to put in your mouth for it to work. They got the insight that, whoa, anything that tastes this bad, people must assume there's a reason for it. And so they went with, I hate it, but I love it. I figure anything that tastes this bad has got to work. Amazing. The insight was, this tastes terrible. We're not going to tell people it tastes great. We're going to tell people that the bad taste is how you know it works. It's a benefit to someone. All right. So here's some other things. People use numbers on their websites all the time, as we'll see in a minute. If you've ever been in a meeting about what to put on your website, someone will say, oh, you need a bunch of metrics on there. But numbers are really only effective when they're repeated. Trident Trident Gum talked forever about 4 out of 5 dentist surveys. How do I know that? Because I'm old. But for 40 something years, I've heard them talk about that number, 4 out of 5. Ivory soap, since literally the 1980s, has been talking about being 99 and 44/100% pure. Why? Because that number sticks in people's minds. It could be 100. You can reduce 99 to 11/25, but 99 and 44/100ths, and that repeating that for 150 years suggests purity. It's a shorthand. And you probably have something like this on your website where it's like 50%, 98%, 14%. People are just glancing. They won't remember any of this. I love this because it says both 1 and 600 million. It doesn't mean anything. Don't be afraid to pretend something that is not unique about your product is unique. Most soap floats. Ivory's talked about it floats. It says it floats for 150 years, but that doesn't mean anything. Even if you have a commodity product, there is some part of the process that you can own because no one else is talking about it. Eric sort of alluded to Mad Men. There's a great scene in Mad Men, the show, where they're talking about Lucky Strike cigarettes and they're going through, well, what's the process for how you make these? And the guy from Lucky Strike says, well, we toast the tobacco, and they're like, that's it, it's toasted. And they're like, well, everyone toasts their tobacco, but no one else talks about it. In whatever you sell, there is something that is a commodity about your product that nobody else calls out. It's an opportunity. And I love this example too. So Jack Daniels, there's some confusion about whether it's Scotch, whether it's bourbon, whether it's whiskey, and what the hell the difference is between any of those things. I love that you can tell people what your product isn't to tell them what it is. It's not Scotch, it's not bourbon, it's Jack. And you can imagine if your product combines 2 different things, it's not a CRM tool, it's not marketing automation, it's Fluzzio. That's a way to explain it, because now people want to know, wait, I understand email, I understand or CRM, I understand marketing automation. Like, how do those, what do you mean it's not both of those things? It starts a conversation. Eric asked me to share this one. One idea not to steal. Everyone goes with this, oh, it's a something that doesn't suck. And I know they think they're being cute, but like everyone has this. It's no nonsense pricing that doesn't suck. Google style search that doesn't suck. AI powered project track. Yeah, you know what doesn't suck? Not using doesn't suck. Please don't fall into this trap. It's cheap. All right, so I love this ad from Volkswagen. Volkswagen was probably the best, had the best ads in my view from the 1950s to the 1960s. They ran this ad that ran in the newspaper as 2 pages. On the left was a blank page. On the right said how to do a Volkswagen ad. And I think the advice they give is how you would also write software copy. Look at the car. Look at your product. Look harder. You'll find enough advantages to fill a lot, like air-cooled engine, the economy, design that never goes out of date. Don't exaggerate. Some people get 50 miles to the gallon. Some only get 28, average 32. Don't overpromise. Call a spade and a suspension, not something like orbital cushioning. Even in 1968, when they ran this, they knew about Gobbledy. They were telling you then not to use it. Speak to the reader, don't shout, meaning like treat your reader like an adult. Pencil sharp, you're on your own. I love this. It's true. Look at your product. What are the different components of it? Talk about them like an adult. Don't overpromise. Use plain language. You'll stand out. And here's like the outcome of that. Just a couple more examples here. So this is my favorite Volkswagen ad. So Volkswagen, when they brought the VW bus over here, they focus grouped it and everyone said, that is the ugliest thing I've ever seen. And so they knew they couldn't go to market and say, look at this beautiful new van. They knew it took a certain kind of person. And they had a second insight, which was, at least in the 1960s, the husband was the buyer, the wife was the influencer. And so they decided, okay, it takes a certain kind of person to love this, and we have to go speak to the wife. And they said, well, who's the wife who would love this bus? And they said, can she break her own bread? Does she worry about the bomb? Does she let your daughter keep a pet snake in the backyard? Does she invite 13 people to dinner, even though there's service for 12? Does she name her cat Rover? And does she make her neighbors' children wish she were their mother? That is the outcome of understanding your customer and your position in the market. And if there is a more specific, wonderful piece of copy, then your target market makes your neighbor's children wish you were their mother. I don't know what it is. And this kind of great copy can show up anywhere in the most basic areas. So I got this today from Gooder, which is a sunglasses company. just like a promo email. You get an infinity number of these over the next couple of weeks. And it's glasses, and it says, crap, did I just tip that guy $8 or 800? Is that a one or an I or a bug? Stupid pesky chin whisker, you deserve to see clearly. And then here's a 35% off. Love it. And finally, last example. This is an order confirmation from Vite Authority, which is a vitamin company. Everyone has order confirmation. Most of them are boring. It's crazy what we just witnessed, Stephanie. All was quiet when we heard the intercom crack of life. Listen up, people. We've got an order from our new friend. But no one could hear the announcement over the roar of applause. Sparkling water bottles were popped. Tears of joy were shed. Even our lead packer, Zach, smiled, and Zach never smiles. If you understand your brand and your target market and what you stand for, every bit of your copy, everywhere you send it, can look like that. Thanks.
So you can't see the attendees, but everyone's clapping furiously because that was amazing. Thank you so much. That was so good. So many good examples. I love how these kind of sessions are dovetailing together. You have like Mary talking about focusing on one really tight audience and message distribution. And then you have Isaac being like, hey, our ads that are working best are speaking to them very specifically. And then you're like, how you should message is doubling down on that specificity and like to their specific pain. So like these things are all dovetailing together, which is beautiful. I think that so many good learnings for people. I wish I'm not running ads in-house anymore, but if I was, I would just like take this session, take all the ads you shared, and then create my own versions for Keepa, because those are all so high quality and such good like places to start and examples. So yeah, Jared, thank you so much.
Awesome. So I don't know, are you sharing the presentation, or people can reach out to me? And I'm happy to share it. I love talking about this stuff. So.
Yeah, I'm sharing the recording. Can I share the slides as well?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I'll be sharing the slides with everyone, and then I'm going to ask you after this to come on and do a private Q&A with the group to talk messaging with people. So we'll see if you're down.
Can't wait
For that. All right, amazing.
Thanks.
Sweet. We got like one more minute. If anyone has a question you want to ask.
I'm here.
I didn't see many, but. All right. Well, I guess we had one. Is there a good way to use metrics on the website? I think you covered that in the numbers thing, which is.
Good way to use metrics? Yeah. Pick one metric. Like in that block where it had 6 different metrics, nobody will read or remember that. Own a number. That's like another. I always talk about like, I would say it's like a fun activity in your office, but I do think it's kind of it is a fun activity versus like sort of the normal day-to-day stuff you do. Like if there was one number that represented what you do, one number that would represent your product, like what is it? Every product has that number. Everyone does. There's always a number. And if you think about, like, I always talk about the example from Geico, 15 minutes will save you 15% on your car insurance. That actually took a very long time and a lot of work to get to. And what they learned was, actually, if you call them, the call is only 8 minutes. But that people didn't believe 8 minutes. They thought it was too short. And so they're like, well, could it be 12? Could it be 20? Then they came up with 15. And 15, when they focus groups, that was super resonant and also fit with the 15%. There's something in because if I said to you, well, what's the one thing in insurance? And by the way you're going to remember it is because there's going to be an animated lizard repeating this all the time. You'd be like, that sounds insane, but it works. Own a number. It doesn't even matter what the number is. Just own it.
And repeat it over and over. Amazing. Yeah. All right, Jared, thanks so much. I highly, highly, highly recommend Jared's newsletter, Gobbledy. So go ahead and check it out if anyone's looking for another awesome newsletter to read in your inbox. All right. Thanks so much, Jared. Really, really appreciate that. That was an awesome session, giving us a lot of inspiration. All right. Now we changed gears there. We went up in altitude. We went to high with messaging. We're going to go right back into the weeds. Here we go. We got Timo, the head of growth at Cyberhaven. This was an awesome story when I connected with Timo, because in my mind, what it really is coming into a demand gen machine that's kind of working, and then just like such a high level of operational excellence across the motion. And then he has results to back it up, which he'll share, but really just like executing at every part at a really, really, really high level in order to just like make a machine that was kind of working work super well. So I'm really excited for this one. Timo, I will give you the stage.
Thank you for the introduction. Really appreciate it, Eric. As Eric mentioned, Timo Yi, head of growth at Cyberhaven. Actually recently transitioned into a head of AI operations role. So this is actually a little bit more of a look in the past. A couple of key themes I'll be exploring. One, kind of going back to first principles, people want to buy from things that are actually valuable. Obviously the product experience and all that stuff. But two, how do you do that when you're really budgeting on resources, right? And context there was pretty much I joined Cyberhaven back in February of 2024. Was the only person who was doing the pipe gen side of the business. Since then, the team has scaled up a whole lot. So kind of had to dabble in a little bit of everything. And this is kind of the recap of the first year or so of my experience at Cyberhaven. So with that said and contextualized, we'll dive right on in. Cool. So this is the kind of title statement. We improved pipe to spend by 300%, give or take, and we also 4.7x the DG sourced pipeline. For the 300%, I'm mostly speaking to Q2 through Q1 along the bottom. And then overall pipeline is speaking from Q1 to Q1. Now, a little bit of an apples to oranges comparison. I'm sure there's probably someone already reacting, being like, oh, that's not metric driven at all. The reason why we're measuring the efficiency increase between a different period than the overall source pipeline is because we actually more than doubled the budget between Q1 25 and Q2 25. So that in itself was somewhat of an apples to oranges comparison. Whereas in between Q2 25 and Q1 26, we were continuously scaling up the budget. So how do we do it, right? And I kind of mentioned to some of the first principles thinking and some of the, placing yourself in the shoes of the customer earlier. But the three big things we want to highlight, situation that we walked into, as Eric mentioned, was somewhat working. We had some campaigns running, but we weren't seeing crazy high levels of engagement or ROI efficiency from it. Two, what was the strategy? How do we tackle it, right? Really doing kind of like a, maybe not quite a 0 to 1, but like a 0.5 to 1 or 0.25 to 1 approach. And what were things that stood out? And how do we address it? And then finally, what worked and what lessons did we learn? So there were three core problems. These were some were very obvious from the outside in and very obvious immediately. Other ones took a little bit of time to kind of sift through. I think that's kind of the first thing that I spent the first week or two doing, just understanding what we had done before, what we had tried, why we had tried it. Spent a lot of time just understanding the state of union. I found one, we were overinvested in demand capture. So part of this is actually, pressures that I think every marketer or growth hacker faces, which is like, hey, deliver ROI as soon as possible. Naturally, I was checking out some of our demo requests. I was looking at what has converted the best in the past, and I figured let's launch a couple of requested demo ads, see if we can juice up the numbers a little bit, and then essentially use the borrowed time to figure out what else we could be doing or should be doing. However, because we were super indexed on that, I felt like we were only doing demand capture, and I think that that's a very dangerous thing for especially early stage companies to do, right? If the demand doesn't exist, there's no demand to capture. Secondly, it was a single channel reliance. There was a heavy investment on Facebook, not a whole lot of investment on LinkedIn, the argument being that the CPMs are too expensive. And there was not a whole lot of investment in Google, rationale being that search volume wasn't high enough and no one really knew who we were. It was really just capturing organic, wasn't really like a growth driver. It was more growth collector, which I generally do agree with as well. But we saw some major problems with Facebook. One, unsurprisingly, low quality leads. Cyberhaven is a very traditional enterprise B2B motion. I think Facebook has been a challenge for a lot of enterprise B2B. Immediately stepped in and saw kind of some of those issues as well. And then two, channel concentration risk, right? Every channel, especially when overlaid with an audience, can only support so much budget. There are very few, I think, enterprise B2B markets that can support almost unlimited budgets on any channel. And then finally, a very sloppy marketing sales handoff. I think it's something that a lot of people have dealt with as well, which is it's a lot of manual, non-standardized, as in one-off, ad hoc type handoff processes. They're just sucking a bunch of time, a lot of leads falling out of the funnel. We were not meeting our SLAs, all sorts of things that led to a very poor buyer experience. And then my key realization was, hey, I could go about this in a very traditional approach of pretty image, catchy headline, but it really wasn't going to earn our buyers' attention. And that was the first principles kind of argument, right? The IT security space that Cyberhaven sells into is notoriously suspicious slash cautious slash like, paranoid towards vendors, and they're always inundated with outreach. So I felt like doing the same thing that everyone else was doing or focusing on the image and the catchy headline was probably not going to earn their attention. So here was a three-part strategy. One was mapping target accounts and clean audiences. We started by using modern technology. Primer is actually the main audience management tool that we use. We used that to clean up our audiences. Also used it to start segmenting a lot more. So first part, trimming wasted spend, boost the denominator, vice versa, better targeting, increase the numerator. A lot of this was layering, I think, upwards of 70, 80, 90 different job titles, literally going through a list of 500 departments, sub-departments, the classic kind of firmographic and demographic type filtering. Sounds very basic, not pretending that it's anything new, but the first part of, I think, boosting ROI is limiting the denominator. And that was essentially what we were using Primer to do. I was probably spending upwards of like 2, 3 hours per day in Primer at one point, just trying to make sure we can reel it in a little bit. And then as we kind of got the spend down, we got targeting a little bit better, as our ICP became better defined, then we started expanding into more kind of account-based stuff. But I would say like don't start with that. At least that's not something we found helpful. There's probably a lot more, just like how there's low-hanging fruit in marketing, there's probably a lot of, wasted spend or like unwanted fat that you can trim, and it kind of delivers the same output in the form of better ROI, right? You want to scale what's working, not what's not working. And then finally, secondly, demand creation. This goes back to the demand capture problem that we had before. We're investing much more spend into distributing truly valuable assets to our audience. And that was the kind of, most of the actual bubble from the last page we weren't really marketing to previously. Or if we were marketing to them in ways where we asked them to jump to a demo, and that's not how demand creation works. That's demand capture. Once people are already aware of you and ready to buy or ready to explore, that's where request a demo comes into play. But historically, we had not invested that much in this type of demand creation. And you guys will see a little bit more of what I mean by, what we did to kind of create the demand. But I kind of view demand generation as earning the demand with your X factor. And that's the last thing on demand creation I want to call out is if you do the same exact things that everyone else is doing to generate demand, think like your traditional, checklists or guides or whatever it is, it could work. There's still a lot of value in that, but I think that there needs to be an X factor, and that X factor is, could be a number of things. One, does it have the potential to go viral? Is it something that's truly proprietary that no one else can replicate? Is it something that is, a perspective that is maybe what some might call a hot take? Like there must be something that's like the X factor that really takes it from, okay, we know that every single X type of campaign will deliver 10x ROI or 15x ROI to, hey, it actually has the potential to deliver outsized returns. So that's what I mean by X factor. And then finally, the demand capture portion. I think our direct response campaigns were kind of very classic product centric, which is, keep playing it safe. Hey, show a picture of the console, the platform, whatever it is, call to action, come see the demo, which is, again, serves a purpose and a place. And I think that, people run it and it works to some degree for a reason. But I think we could also improve the demand capture motion, right? Like for the demand capture motion, also leave them lingering like, I remember that name because it was so unique of a demand capture or so unique of a demo request strategy that I'm inclined to remember it. And of course, it's always going to be the one that converts fastest through the funnel for the most part. So it's a quick way to prove ROI. And then the main takeaway here is as you're getting these kind of demo requests come in, one thing that I've always found really helpful is talking to the front lines. If you're thinking like, hey, historical demo request rates convert at a 50% rate or 45% rate, whatever it might be, but for your new campaign, it's delivering 60 or it's delivering underperforming like 25. It's going to be really hard to tease out some of the whys through just looking at your ad copy, dropping it into ChatGPT, whatever the reason might be. The real takeaway there is just get up and talk to the SDR or get up and talk to the AE, like see what the experience was really like. You can review transcripts, but transcripts aren't perfect. One, two, you can throw it all into ChatGPT. It'll give you the high level summary, but just going to the SDR and AE, I've had examples where I talked to them and was like, hey, that meeting looked like it went really well based on the transcript. And they're like, well, yeah, to be professional, but it was a terrible meeting. It just looks like I was being professional and being nice. And I was like, oh, okay, got it. Would not have known that had I not talked to you, right? So I actually view the front lines as your best resource for feedback gathering up until the point where a deal is progressing through the funnel. So this is very helpful, in my opinion, for first step conversations. And then diving a little bit further, mapping the target accounts and clean audiences. This is what I was talking about earlier. On the right-hand side is a screenshot of our primer instance, one of the main audiences that we were working with. You'll see what I was talking about before with, I guess we got close to 100 plus job titles, segmenting pretty much across the board. I was actually working with the primer team to kind of redesign this summary page on the right-hand side. So if I find something that doesn't really make sense in the summaries, then I can immediately, go back and forth and tweak it. It's kind of like a live iteration back and forth, not just starting with the inputs and then waiting for the outputs to check, but being able to work both from the inputs and the outputs to kind of hone in on your audience. This also required a lot of deep research, to be honest with you, because I don't come from a cybersecurity background. This was my first foray into cybersecurity. So a lot of what you're seeing here is actually a translation from the initial 1 to 2 weeks where we're spending so much time just learning the market. And then secondly, referring to historical close won data for industry targeting, I think that's a very, again, table stakes thing that you should be doing whenever you get in a new job, right? So I was looking at all of our existing customers when they had closed, especially for a startup. I think some early customers might not be reflective of the current state of the business, current capabilities of the platform, or the future direction that the company wants to move in. So the older the customer, the more I have to question, like, did they buy us for the reasons that we are still able to provide today? If not, then I don't want to make a biased judgment on what our ICP really looks like. Dynamic exclusions, I think this is really one of the things that saved a lot of time, right? I think everyone's used to exporting CSVs of customers, active opportunities, whatever it might be, and then adding them as exclusion lists or pushing it through HubSpot and whatever tool that you might have. But I think being able to layer on multiple data providers and then also layering on the CRM within the same platform and also being able to push that across Google, Facebook, and LinkedIn, they just saved me a lot of time early on. It's half the reason why I was able to do so much, like all three of the channels by myself. And then finally, like I've always preferred doing exclusions as opposed to inclusions when possible. Especially when getting into a seat for the first time, you might have predispositions, you might have suspicions, you might have hypotheses, but you don't want to accidentally only look at what your biases confirm. You want to make sure that you're not overly exclusive by using inclusions, if that makes sense. And then kind of diving into demand creation aspect, right? There's kind of general downloadable content, and some of these play into, I'm personally a very, very big fan of document ads. I think that one, it almost inherently takes more of a professional stance. Two, it's a resource that people can keep afterwards and reference afterwards or share with other people. So it kind of has this natural, if your content is valuable, other people will share it with their colleagues. So it kind of helps serve as like a 80% lead gen, but 20% also brand awareness type of an investment. And then three, it's harder to produce, I would say. And so when you have a really high quality PDF asset, it's something that stands out in the timeline. And it's something that doesn't really look like it's actually an ad until people are clicking through. And one of the big things that I really like to do is have a preview of up until like 3 or 4 pages in. So it'll be the sexy kind of title slide or like the intention grabbing title slide. It'll be some sort of an overview of what you'll get away from the report. Third one will be a table of contents. And that kind of shows people like, hey, here's a full like here's what to expect if you go through all 23 pages of the top 15 DDO use cases or all 19 pages of the 11 criteria. The table of contents essentially is telling people like, hey, is the rest of this guide going to be good and up to the quality of this first couple of pages? And then the fourth page is actually like the first page of the first section. And that's kind of where people start to see the style of writing, style of like content that you're delivering. The one on the far right here is actually a case study where we had a couple of customer case studies. Of course, people tend to do, blog write-ups. Some people will do videos. All of those are interchangeable. I think the world of AI makes it really easy for you to essentially change content from one format to another. So we turned one of our customer case study videos into a brochure, and this one's going to provide less value, so to speak, in the sense that you're not going to have takeaways if you're the reader, but it's some of that trust signals, and it's also some of that like, hey, if I'm actually in the investment or advisory industries, this might actually be something relevant to me because there might be use cases that we are solving that they've already solved with Cyberhaven. Of course, the classic webinars. I think the webinars was the best way to stand out there, in my opinion, would actually be to bring speakers, right? Like speakers that the industry knows that are respected. So, for example, Bob West, former CISO, Palo Alto Networks, was a really big one for us. I think that was one of our longest standing and still to this day most successful webinars. We also have one that didn't show here because I couldn't find the graphic for it for some reason, but we were working with Alex Ionescu, and he was one of our co-hosts. He was actually one of the founding engineers over at CrowdStrike and helped us design our technical architecture. So, of course, when you have certain names that those who are plugged into the know, they're going to be a lot more receptive and inclined to register, right? Now, that's a pretty big contrast to traditional webinars where you're kind of speaking more product focused. It's a lot more discussion focused and form centric, similar to what Eric's hosting today, right? Where it's like, hey, the focus is on providing value to the people who are there, not necessarily driving everyone towards, book a demo after this webinar. Traditionally webinars, I think, are very helpful for accelerating people through the marketing funnel, going from just general awareness all the way through, you know what, this is a really cool product. I've seen a live demo now I understand what's going on. We actually had about half of our webinars just be all panel style that did not actually show off a live product demo. But those were also the ones that got the most interest. They were the ones who, people remembered or like talked about later on. So I think, again, goes back to what I was saying, demand creation stuff or demand creation, and also ideally demand generation down the line, a capture down the line, which I'll show later on, but demand capture that leaves an impression. Because really at the end of the day, you're fighting for mind share, right? Especially as a startup who is not a name brand yet. And of course, the classic product launches on the right-hand side. I think pretty much every startup is going to have a product launch seemingly every quarter, if not multiple times a quarter. So you might as well tap into that. And then here's the kind of demand capture that we're talking about. Left and right, I don't want to focus too much on purely because I think it's a traditional gift card campaign. Secondly, I think the main value of these is to jump out at you and then to help you remember some of our colors, some of our themes. Of course, people might have a very guttural reaction to gift cards. I'm very aware of that myself. I also have very strong hesitancy around them. But what we did see when we were testing is that the cost per lead for traditional, here's the console, here's a screenshot, request a demo, those tended to come in at CPLs of minimum 5 times. I've seen as high as 8 times higher than these $50 gift card ones, right? So long-winded way of saying there's a time and place for it. Of course, you can't just spam the entire audience and expect this to be a perpetually delivering campaign. But when you've already invested a lot in generating or creating demand and you want a very effective capture motion or capture campaign, I do view the left and right to be extremely effective. The one in the middle is the one that I would probably use as one of the stronger examples for demand capture that also does a little bit of demand generation. We were marketing paintball markers as one of our giveaway items. We had previously also done a replica of the Boring Company's flamethrowers. So these were kind of more out there, wilder gifts that most companies wouldn't be giving away. I still remember spending hours having to send liability waivers to the people who took the demos. And all right, we know that this probably woke up the little kid in you, but at the same time, the little kid in you, if you accidentally shoot someone in the eye, we don't want to be responsible for that. But it got to the point where we had people coming up to us at conferences. We had people coming up to us. We had other vendors that we partnered with that was like, hey, I heard about you guys through our network. You guys were the ones who did the paintball markers, right? Or the flamethrower campaigns, right? I was like, yeah, we were. And I think it, again, lends to that step a little bit outside of the box. First principles in this sense would be not providing value, quote unquote, but providing, leaving an impact, leaving something that it serves your purpose, but it also means that they might talk about it in their day-to-day lives because it's so out of the box. And then just to recapture, I know this is a relatively hopefully I'm not going over on time, right? I think I'm pacing quite well, but the three-part strategy, map target accounts and clean audiences. This is really just focused on making sure that the denominator is as low as possible. And then once you've kind of found a steady foundation, then do the scale up. And that was a lot of Q1. That's what I was saying earlier. Our budget more than doubled from Q1 25 to Q2 25. I didn't want to scale up until we had figured out what was working. Otherwise, we'd just be throwing more money at waste. And then two, demand creation. Really, content is king. I think content that is unique is king. One of the things that I didn't show on here, just because I couldn't find it in the spur of the moment, was our AI adoption risk report. It was something that was generated by our internal team, proprietary, looking at how AI usage has grown year over year, which tools are being used, what types of data are getting fed into it, what types of data are coming out of it, where does that data end up in the organization? A lot of stuff that historical tools and legacy tools would never be able to see, but we were because our technology specialized in doing that, right? When we first released the asset, candidly, I was like, should I put money behind this? I feel like everyone's kind of AI'd out, you know? I think putting in another AI related content out there might be a little bit tough. And then as I was thinking about it a little bit more, I was realizing, I don't think anyone else can provide this type of content because no one else has our type of technology. So this might actually be something that is our quote unquote X factor. So we put a lot of budget behind it. And for the first, call it month or two, we didn't actually see pipeline. And it was something that a lot of people internally were even asking me, like, are you sure that it's the right thing to be doing to put so much budget behind this asset? And I had to explain to them, like, yes, 100%, because I think that this is something that's truly unique for us, right? If this goes viral, if this is something that people actually find value in, it'll solidify itself potentially as like an annual recurring report that everyone's looking forward to us on, that we are like a thought leader on. Lo and behold, after call it 2 months of investment, our report that was released back in, I want to say June of 2024, was suddenly picked up by CIO Online, CISO Online, PR Newswire, a couple, like essentially a lot of the kind of major dark reading, a lot of the kind of big publications within the cybersecurity space all started taking notice because they saw it so much. Eventually, some of their employees started downloading it. They started reading it, and they're like, "Wow, these stats are shocking. Why did we not cover this?" And by the end of the kind of life cycle of the 2024 report, it was 2024. I keep saying 2025 for those who are confused. It's our fiscal years are like 1 year ahead. But by the end of the 2024 AI adoption and risk report running its course, we had gotten upwards of 180 media citations from it. And all of that was essentially seeded by this investment in pushing a unique piece of content that no one else could really replicate and just say like, well, we did a similar study and our numbers say differently. Well, it's like, well, you can't produce the study because it's something that only we have information on, hence that being our X factor. And then finally, demand capture, which is kind of what I covered before. That was more so trying to jump out from the timelines and make sure that if you can leave a strong impression or like a very memorable impact, that you leverage your demand captures to do so, as opposed to like a standard boring screenshot of the console or platform. And that's pretty much it for me.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Timo. This is awesome. I love the clarity, and there's so many good nuggets in there of doing, just kind of executing better on all these channels. So thanks so much. Like we said before, this community and these events are only possible because of our amazing sponsors like Primer and Customer.io. Timo's a happy Primer customer, and I think a great example of the leverage that it can give you as a small team. One, with dialing in your targeting like you were showing, but two, with saving all that time of doing something that we all really, really, really hate, which is constantly uploading audiences and platforms. So I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to launch this poll again real quick. If you're interested in Primer or our other sponsor, Customer.io, and $100 for a demo, go ahead and answer the poll, and we'll follow up and reach out if you haven't already. All right. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Timo. You can stop sharing now.
Cool.
All right, next up, we have a really interesting one. So, we run this demand community, talk to people all the time about what they're struggling with. And I mean, the most constant pain point that comes up over and over again is attribution and measurement. So we did a practitioner deep dive with Eric a little bit ago about he's the head of enterprise management at Atlassian, built out a lot of their attribution systems, and is just like one of he's the go-to expert in my network who is really gets marketing and really gets attribution, and he has a point of view on it that's really helpful because it's not like a high level framework, but it's also not super in the weeds of like exactly what field you should set up and why. It's a really nice balance of like what we can actually use to solve this problem as marketers. So very excited, Eric. I'm excited to bring you on stage. Let's go.
Awesome. Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I'm so excited about this topic. I used to lead Atlassian demand gen, but I just like this topic is gonna go from like high level down to like into the weeds. And I work today with mini startups and really just talk about how to basically make them communicate what marketing is doing and how it's performing. So if we get into the presentation, I'll just share my screen. So 20 minutes, let's go.
Let's go.
Let's do this. Here we are. Yeah, I worked with a lot of startups today, and so I think for the context of this presentation, things just to keep in mind is it's mostly, I would say, like this is great for as a Series A. I mean, honestly, up to maybe a smaller public company, but mostly Series A, Series B, Series C type of companies. You're running demand gen programs, and most of the work that I do is between like HubSpot and Salesforce as a marketing automation tool, Marketo and Salesforce. And so if you're using some of those tools, I think that a lot of these like hands-on examples would be really applicable. And if you're not, there's still a lot of good takeaways here. And so if we think about attribution and the topic of attribution, yeah, it's definitely controversial, especially the last couple of months. You'll have people like John Miller and Elena Verna saying like attribution's a lie, like this is total BS. And it's like I get the headline, but that's like I think it's more to do with like how you're using data and maybe potentially what you're declaring it to be versus actually is attribution BS, because you absolutely need to be able to tell your leadership team, tell your CFO, tell your board seats, how marketing is doing. And you can't just say, well, we have brand, we have other, out of home, word of mouth things that are going on. And so it's just a combination of all the above. Yes, but you do need to have some clear data there. And I'd say that I think, yes, like the past 10 years have sort of trained a lot of leadership teams to think about things in terms of like a singular MQL and a really clear funnel. And today we know that's absolutely not the way it is. It's many touch points, a big buying committee that you need to influence. It's not always linear. And I think that they get that, but you need to be able to like confidently show that there's improvement with marketing with investments, and you are an investment team, like you are getting dollars, and so you do need to show how that's performing. And I want to talk through like how I've been able to do that in my career. So I think that on the left hand side, yes, there's all these behind the scenes activities that are going on that you'll never be able to definitively say that was the touch point and this is how much this influenced this deal going forward. There's so much brand awareness. What's your reputation? What are other people talking about? People who potentially like will hear your podcast and then look at that on Google later. Your attribution tools will not appropriately show that. But that doesn't mean you can't measure these brand efforts. Like you could do holdout groups. What if, do we see a lift when we had that turned on versus not? If we warm up this set of group of accounts with these types of, CC or CTV ads, do we see a lift in conversion rates overall? So there are ways to do that on the left. And then on the right hand side, I would say like no excuses. Like you don't need fancy tools. You just need to have a really, really clear system that can stamp and track UTM parameters. Do you have set up conversion goals with your ad platforms? Like these are direct response campaigns that do have a pretty simple like input output lever. So I think some of the other talks have really amplified this, and I really think some of the tactics that the team has gone into has really been interesting. But the way I think about it in that those same kind of two levers is like on the left is, what marketing activities, what investments are we making that is really amplifying our awareness and making sure the ICP knows what we do. So like, what are we doing out in the market to generate demand? You have to do something that's pushing the message out to people that don't know. And on the right, it's going to be what tactics are we doing? What levers do we have to actually like improve that conversion rate and capture leads and capture demo requests? I mean, you still want to bring in inbound hand raisers to your sales team. And so I think the combination of these two is very important. And also how you communicate this to your team and to your leadership is really important because they're going to be measured differently. And you want them to understand that they're going to be measured differently. So we're about to dive into some dashboards that I talked about, but in summary, use attribution more as a tool to help like highlight stories, highlight how different tactics and channels are working together. Not that it's 100%, this is what the credit is, because if you go down the credit path, you'll never win. It's just a lose-lose path there. And then just be transparent on like if you are using a model, where what the basically the criteria is. And then also at Atlassian, we always use this phrase "one team, one dream." We were like very hand in hand in partnership with sales, trying to amplify the fact like look at this like amazing deal where like sales outbound and then like marketing came in or marketing warmed up and then sales outbounded and just like showing the multitude of touch points. And that's just like a really, really good thing to highlight and build trust across the team. So to get your foundation set up, this is like my no excuses slide. Like everybody should be able to do this. It's not crazy rocket science. You don't need to go and invest in something. I think like most demand gen marketers who have solid, web skills, understand how to use Google Tag Manager. I would, learn in how those systems work and how do you integrate your ad platforms with your marketing automation tools. That's really, really important to get set up. I actually put together a spreadsheet so we can share this out after the call, but it's basically a step-by-step guide of what I would do as you get going. Moving forward. The other thing I would do that I think is a big miss with some of the organizations that I go into is that they're just not using the same language. There's not a lot of like clear aligned definition of what are we measuring and like what does each stage mean and what does each status mean, because that's really, really critical for you to understand the overall effectiveness of your marketing channels. And so if you have, like the word conversion rate gets thrown around all the time in meetings, and it's like, what are we talking about? Are we talking about website to lead conversion rate? Are we talking about an MQL that's converting to an opportunity? Are you talking about an opportunity win rate? Like really understanding and getting on the same page with your leadership team in terms of like where people are moving and why that's important is just really important. So I would have, this is a template that I'm happy to share. And this is my definitions of what I think is typically set up at companies, but you can obviously play around with this a little bit. So getting into our reports, when you're doing a QBR or a monthly report, or you're preparing for a board deck, typically leadership and like the chief revenue officers, they want to understand like, first of all, we had a plan, we had a goal of whether it's MQAs, MQLs, pipeline, how are we doing to that goal? And basically, what are the levers that are influencing that? How do we expect to perform if you're in the middle of a quarter where you think you're going to end up? And then where should we invest in for next quarter? What big bets do we need to do? What optimizations could be done to help us get there? And then what tests do we need to set up to measure incrementality going forward. So typically, if you're looking at it from an MQL perspective, an individual perspective, this is a pretty common slide that I would present, which comes down to top of funnel down to bottom of the funnel. And so I think it's important to make sure that when you are doing something like this, is this a cohort snapshot? So are those MQLs, are those converting those SQLs, are those converting to pipeline versus there's like snapshots, which is just total numbers there. So it's important to kind of clarify that. When you go to performance by campaign type, this is really helpful with Salesforce campaign objects. Typically, this is the what. So, what is actually driving the lead capture? This is described by webinar, demo forms. Don't use this as a source. I think sometimes I come into an organization and I see like webinar as a source. That's not the source of the lead. The source would be like, you brought them to the webinar via email. You brought them to the webinar via paid social. Those are sources. And so on the flip side of this, I'll just start. You go into the source over here. And so I would show both in the deck. So not only by type, but by source. And the way that I would measure this is usually using Salesforce campaign objects. So as people are coming in and engaging with each one of those assets, we're tagging that as a Salesforce campaign, and we're associating the source that they were associated with. So hopefully that makes sense of how I would use that. And I could use that with HubSpot, Marketo, or Salesforce. And then going back up to the top, I would say that we do look at it from a leads perspective, but we can also use this as an account perspective. So I'll talk a little bit about from an ABM perspective, not just leads that are going through the funnel, but we might want to look at the total number of accounts. So how many accounts have gone to a webinar? How many accounts have ultimately become an opportunity after going to a webinar? That just helps like kind of fill out that full funnel vision without having to think through like, well, this person went to the webinar, but then another person was on the opportunity at the account. That gets missed all the time. So I would definitely look at it from an account perspective as well. If you're going to plan, I would have in the middle of the quarter, I like to show this view. It's basically a daily snapshot view. And I think it kind of tells the story of a quarter. It kind of shows these spikes when you do like, let's say a big event. You get a big batch of leads that kind of comes in. You could show that story of how you hit your goal. And also helps kind of help the leadership team have anticipation of where they're going. Cool. Other things that I like to show would be like multiple touch points. So as we know, there's many buyers, many people that would be engaging with different pieces of content. And so it's not just, hey, we got these hand raisers, but let's look at accounts that had demos submitted, and let's look at accounts that had demos submitted plus people that were going to webinars, going to white papers, going to ebooks, going to any other types of engagement. And you could say that, oh, wow, like no surprise, accounts that have more awareness, more touch point history will have a higher conversion rate. And I think like showing stories like that are going to be really helpful. And I'll show you another report that really highlights like that buying journey. And then that helps the teams replicate kind of what they need to do to influence those accounts. Couple other tips I would recommend, like split your MQLs out. As you could see, like a demo request might convert at 45% to opportunity, but the sponsored content or something like that could convert at like 2 or 3%. And so when you have a blended rate, it's going to be very confusing to show like, well, how do we 3x that or 4x that? Like, what you want to do is really find that combination and understand what type of assets or content is actually leading to conversions and focus on that. And then other fields that I've seen at advanced organizations is they add timestamps in terms of when people are being followed up with. And so that helps marketing and sales really understand, like, is it a conversion problem? Is it that we aren't following up with these leads? Is it that we're too slow? Or are the leads bad quality? Like these are all common questions that people want to know. And so adding those extra little custom fields on the left would be really helpful. speaking of ABM, I know we have a few ABM presentations today. The way I look at it again is there is a buying committee, and so understanding how accounts are moving through the funnel is a little bit easier to digest than specific contacts, just because there's so many different contacts. It could be a little bit messy, and so I like to look at, hey, here's our like total addressable market. Here's how many accounts we've been able to reach with our advertising, our marketing, our campaigns. Here's how many have at least, become a demo or have become a marketing qualified account, accounts created and accounts won. So if you look at that, here's a Salesforce dashboard that I built. This is all pretty repeatable using the contact and account objects to figure out number of accounts that are in your like tier 1, tier 2, or account A, account B. Things like that you might segment your account list by. And then within that group, you could then create dashboards of how are these snapshots changing over time? How many are actually turning into ops over time? What does that look like? And so I found this was like a really, really helpful dashboard. And then this account lookup report is basically a Salesforce campaign report that you just basically just enter the account name, and then it basically will spit out all of those touch points across the time with different activities. And so you could say like, hey, this account, there's no way that one account could have one touch point be credited for 100% of that pipeline. And so this really kind of demonstrates that there's 17 different people at this account. Look at how many different touch points there were. And so I would do that, as well as another example of just how somebody might attend a webinar, but another person might actually be the person to register and book a demo. So you'd want to associate those two together.
And real quick, I just thought this was super valuable when you showed this last time, Eric, is like the point of this report, or one great use case for it, is when you're getting pushback from leadership about like, hey, what's the ROI of our LinkedIn ads program, or like, did this email campaign work, is like, just pull up this report. And if it's true that they saw one LinkedIn ad and they converted, that's great. But to get leadership bought in on the fact that all these different touch points are important and we can't give one singular credit, I think is a great way to use data to get the rest of the team on board.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for the shout out. I mean, again, all of this is to, again, prove the effort, prove the ROI. And I think in this point, this person wasn't on the opportunity, the CFO. And so you wouldn't know in this example that you would think that this opportunity or this event would have no ROI because somebody else at the company actually did the action. And it's just like, you could use an attribution tool to tie this together. So when they say like attribution is a lie or attribution is BS, it's like, it's not that the tool is doing anything wrong. It's just like, you need to understand that all of these are playing a role together. And so that's what's really important. How to create an account engagement report in Salesforce. Yes, Kim, basically this is just a campaigns with contacts report. If you find that in Salesforce, and you just basically say, filter this campaign by the company's name, and then you could have the first date associated by month, and you could see all of these different campaign names or campaign types. All right, I think we're almost at 20 minutes right there. These are the last two slides are just how I would break down specific channels. Most of my talk has been just about how to like tell that story and that narrative of multiple touch points and those overall slides. But if you're trying to report on paid search or paid social, I think is absolutely tractable. Everybody should be able to do this level of analysis where you can show spend, captured leads, did those leads or accounts turn to ops? How much pipeline did you create? All things you need to do to help prove that investment. So thank you all for your time. I'd be happy to answer any questions as well.
Eric, this is super helpful. Thanks so much. I don't know, plug something. How can we be helpful to you? You just dropped all this value for us.
No. I mean, just find me on LinkedIn if you have questions. I just want to help people do good things. But my company is Demand Gen Solutions, and I'm working with a lot of startups today. But happy to just chat. It's all good.
Eric did a newsletter with us about the same thing. So hit me up if you want access. to that as well. I think just a great counterbalance to people saying like attribution's dead, like you were saying, or the solution is just this like super broad, like, track general growth and make sure the number goes up. This is like, no, it's important to actually, it's not an excuse to not have data to back up your decisions. And a lot of these things don't take a huge amount of work. Like you can set them up relatively quickly and they can give you a lot of insight. So thanks so much, Eric. I really appreciate it. Well, actually, I guess we have a couple minutes. Does anyone have questions for Eric? We hit on Kim's one. All right. No questions. He covered them all in his presentation. It was that good. I love it. All right. Well, we can get started a little early on the next one. So this one I'm very, very excited for. AEO is a hot topic right now. And there's a lot of buzz about it and a lot of people talking about it, and it's hard to discern who you should listen to and who you shouldn't. And my point of view on it is you should listen to people who have results to back up what they're saying, and that's what Liam at Discovered has. They helped a SaaS brand that we're not going to name, but that you've definitely heard of, drive 3,200 plus trials a month from AI search, which is up over 6 times year over year. So this is going to be a really cool breakdown of how to actually drive results with AEO and where the market is at right now. So thanks so much, Liam. I've really appreciated all of your content and how tactical it is, and I'm excited to bring you on stage today. Let's go.
I appreciate the invite. Describe me well, so I am a Google Meet lady. So,
Liam, I'm getting some echo on your mic right now.
Okay, now?
Yeah, it might just be me. Is anyone else getting echo?
Yeah, I was kind of getting it's like a fuzzy mic or fuzzy echo.
Let me stop sharing. I'm sure. How we know?
Still kind of fuzzy.
Really? Okay, let me switch over to
my headphones. Is that better?
Yeah, much better.
All right,
Yeah,
we just
that's
have
good.
to roll with. We just have to roll with that. The professional mic isn't doing its job.
It's okay. People are here for the content, not for the deep baritone voice, anyway.
Can you see my screen? You should see like a gamma doc.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Okay. So yeah, as Eric mentioned, basically we provide SEO, AEO services. So in this presentation, going to be going through how we took a B2B SaaS company from roughly 575 to just over 3,700 trials per month in 7 weeks with a deliberate AI search strategy. So quick intro, basically, my background is marketing. On the call, who is also called Liam Dunn, is Ben, because I sent him my invite link. So Ben's an engineer and AI researcher. I think this is just important to raise because a lot of what we do under the hood, behind the scenes, is really informed by Ben's technical skill set. So just some evidence then. So just to show you some screenshots, as Eric mentioned, I can't reveal the name of the client. They don't really want competitors sniffing around. But as I said, before, working together around 575 trials per month. This is measured via self-reported attribution. So it's kind of as close to the truth as we can get. It's explicit. After 3,700 trials per month, again, measured by via self-reported attribution. They were working with an SEO agency, which is interesting because there's kind of this big battle at the moment of SEO versus AEO, what's what. I'm not going to try and make that argument in this presentation. They were averaging roughly 10 to 15 articles per month. We took that to roughly 70 plus articles per month. So we think volume does matter as long as you have the right system to ensure it's not slop. And I'll try to share some details on that. I think overall this SEO agency wasn't doing a great job from like a non-branded perspective, hence why they weren't getting the results they wanted. And then after working with us, of course, the business impact increased significantly. So you can see some screenshots here just to, to give you some bulletproof evidence. So we started working together around here. You can see they were averaging 575 trials per month. And then week starting 12th of October 2025, we hit 819 trial users in a week from AI search. This is their self-reported attribution. And then you can see my monthly update to them for October, where we increased to 3.7K trials. Here's a screenshot from GA4 showing, over 10K sessions coming from AI traffic. So the bottom line up front, if there's anything to take away from this, it's the stuff on the screen now. So if we zoom out a bit, looking at the macro, and I'm not going to go into the weeds of this because I think people are just hammering this stuff at the moment on social. And I think we've all heard enough. So the TLDR here is, most buyers are using AI for vendor research. This is supported by the growth of these platforms. It's supported by buyer research that has been done by various companies like Forrester's. There's an unreasonable amount of money being poured into the space. I think the tech industry as a whole is in a bit of a bubble. But where the money goes, a lot of things follow. And from speaking with VPs, heads of marketing, and CMOs, most companies are trying to solve this today. And what I found is a lot of them are just being a bit quiet about it. Maybe they're using like grey hat tactics that they don't want everyone to know about. But from speaking with teams, it seems like everybody's trying to solve this problem right now. The problem, however, is that we're, as marketers, especially if you've built an organic search strategy, you'll probably see your clicks falling through the floor. That's one thing. And AI search has definitely been part of the reason for that. And there's also this loss of narrative control that's happening, right? Buyers are getting answers from AI assistants. There's really less reason to click through to your website. And these LLMs, the AI assistants like ChatGPT, Claude, etc., they're this new gatekeeper. They're almost this gatekeeper that is putting your company in a bad light or a good light. And a lot of the sources that are shaping these AI answers are non-owned, right? The old way, people would visit your website. This is your home, right? You've optimized that website for conversions. You're obviously biased and positioning your company in a positive light. But now buyers are speaking to these AI assistants where the narrative of your company has been shaped by non-owned sources. And so there's this loss of control that's happening, which isn't good from like a company perspective. And then because of this, the less people are clicking through to your website, there's also this dark search thing happening where if less people are clicking through to your website, we've lost visibility, but that doesn't mean influence isn't happening, right? We're still influencing them in the AI answers, but we just need a new set of metrics to measure that. The opportunity then, so it's early days. I think we're really in this like growth hacky era of AI search. AI search is still lower than Google. Google's still, the 200-pound gorilla. So competition is low, but adoption is growing fast. ChatGPT has 800 million weekly active users. This isn't a fad. It's not something that's going away. Also, an opportunity is these platforms are less mature relative to Google's algorithms. So there are arbitrage opportunities. Non-black hat, nothing we do or nothing I'm going to go through is black hat. But there are things you can get away with today that you wouldn't be able to get away with Google's search algorithm. I'll share one specific example of that. And if you're a startup, the good news is that these incumbents that have dominated the SERP for the last 20 years, well, they're going to take longer to adapt. They're going to be slower to move. And so there really is this opportunity for challenges. And, we've personally experimented and had companies with DA0 domains, so fresh domains, get inbound qualified sales calls from AI search, right? This just wasn't possible with SEO. So talking about the problem then and some of the implications. So zero-click research, loss of narrative control and implications for marketers. So if we look at traditional SEO where you type this query, you'd get a list of 10 generic links, and then the buyer has to click these links and conduct research, right? This is like how the buyer journey looked like from a search perspective. Whereas now buyers can have conversations with AI assistants. the AI assistant goes out there and conducts research and then gives the buyer a personalized answer based on their problems, based on their constraints, based on all this stored memory they have of that user. And so there's really less motivation for buyers to click through to your website to get information. And I think this is the biggest impact here has been with like informational content, right? Because if I can just ask AI a question and it gives me an answer, there's really no reason for me to click through to your website. Whereas commercial and transactional intent, nobody's gonna make a purchase decision just because ChatGPT told them something, right? They're still going to click through to your website. They're still going to explore. So the impact is lesser there. I think really informational content as a whole is what gave SEO a bad rep. Like I would consider myself a bit of an outsider. And all I heard from people when the topic of SEO was brought up is basically you'd hire an agency, they'd post a bunch of content, you'd get clicks and impressions, but you'd never make any money. And I think that's really switched, and that's no longer to work in the AI era. So talking about like the loss of control, if you think of how these answers are formed, they're shaped by multiple sources, and often these sources are non-owned, which means it could be your competitor, it could be some random listicle, could be some random conversation that's happening on Reddit or Quora that is really shaping the narrative about your company. So LLMs they're combining this information from multiple sources, often non-owned, so review websites, Reddit, competitors, industry publications. These are really shaping the narrative. And so the surface area that you need to consider is far more than just, say, your website. And so the implication here is if these citations are shaping the AI answers, then our job as marketers is okay, well, how can we shape those citations in our favor? So, our company is being positioned well. And then how can we increase the number of those citations that favor us? And again, I'll come on to that. And so when I think about AEO versus SEO, for me, ultimately it comes down to behavior and technology. So users are behaving differently with AI assistants. So how people would behave on Google is they would just search really short head terms. Whereas with AI assistants, people are given a lot of upfront context. The queries are much longer. They're providing far more context, right? So here's an example of a prompt I've broken down. So they're saying, who they are, their company size, the type of category tool they're looking for, their tech stack, their budget, their problems, their OKRs, how much money they need to make this year. There's all this upfront context. And what these generative systems do is they take that and they go out and look for information. And so really the implication here is your company today discoverable for all these things? When these models go out and look for information, can they associate your company with these things? And really the downstream effect here is your content. And technically, these systems, these generative systems, well, they behave differently to Google, right? So you've probably heard some of these terms. You've got the query fan out process. So the model takes this user prompt and turns it into sub-queries, which are semantically varied. So for example, it might append, CRM, close, which is a company. 10 employees, it might append SMB because this is like a smaller company. So it goes out and conducts web searches of all these semantically varied subqueries. And so the implication here is there's this huge long tail that we need to capture. It's no longer just best CRM software. It's best CRM software for SMB agency founders. There's like such a huge long tail to capture. The second thing is passage retrieval. So what happens when they go out and look for this information is they look for passage candidates. Really, passages are just small blocks of text. And so the implication here as marketers is we need to really think about on-page chunk optimization. This has been a thing in SEO for years. This isn't really new. It's just that most people weren't prioritizing it. And technical SEO is very important. It's no bueno, right? We're not optimizing for humans going onto your website. Humans might allow your website to load for 2 seconds and they have to click through and navigate, whereas machines, they need that information fast. And if your website isn't structured in a way to allow them to navigate your website easily, then they're just going to go to another website. We then have multi-source grounding. So what's happening here is it's not just about what you say, it's can other people corroborate that claim? Can your information be compared against reliable sources, and is it consistent? And so the implication here is we need to be present in those places where that corroboration is happening. And finally is user memory. This is probably one of the biggest things, is one of the last steps that happens is these models, they personalize the answer to the user, right? So in those last stages, they've got the information, they've done the grounding, and then it's a case of, well, is this answer personalized to Liam? And so the implication here is there is no universal #1 rank. It doesn't matter if you have an article that is position 1 for best CRM software, because the content in that article might not be relevant for me, Liam. And so the implication here is you want to aim to be the best fit in all these various scenarios that your ICP has. So adapting to these changes, I'm going to try and move a bit faster because I'm moving slow here. So AI search measurement. So less clicks, less people on our website means we still need to understand how we're influencing decision making in these AI answers. If you're even appearing at all, how you're being framed, and what sources of information are shaping the narrative. We then move on to content, ensuring content that's optimal for LLM retrieval and reasoning. So we're going to use that search measurement to really inform the topics and the structuring of the content in a way that's optimal for these generative systems. And then finally is off-page present building. So as I said, LLMs weigh signals beyond your site. You can't just say you're the best SaaS company in the world. That claim has to be corroborated by others. So traditional PR and backlink campaigns still work here. That's why it's not a case of SEO or AEO. It's really all of the above. However, there is these new surface areas that have emerged that people weren't really focusing on before, such as Reddit, Quora, YouTube, Wikipedia. You've got the notability. A lot of companies don't. For this specific presentation, I'm going to focus on Reddit because we just feel like it has disproportionate upside relative to other off-page communities and platforms, because it tends to be a top 3 cited source. So AI search measurement. So with less clicks to websites, we can no longer rely on traditional search metrics like impressions, keyword positions, and clicks, because most buyers are not going to click through to our website. So we need to get a clearer picture of how we're appearing in AI answers and how this is evolving over time. So on the quantitative side, the leading metrics we tend to measure are mention rate, citation rate, share of voice, and your average position. And I think the qualitative side gets underlooked a lot. You've probably already heard of these metrics. The type of things we look at is, well, what are the quality of these citations? If these companies are controlling my narrative, well, I want to know how they're communicating my company, right? Is the information on those pages generic, outdated, incorrect, or is it specific and differentiated? And the same goes for answer quality. I think this is especially important for SaaS companies, where every quarter, especially now with everyone building using AI, every quarter the product is different. You've probably updated your pricing. You probably have new integrations, and so information is out of date every quarter. And so we really need to consider that third-party surface area of, is there a consistency in our message? So how to complete AI visibility audits. I'm going to skip through this. This is how we approach it. If I was you guys, just use a product. So there's no shortage of AI visibility tools on the market at the moment. We recommend Scrunch. We use it for clients. We're an agency partner, and we think that they're doing some cool things. So you can just pop in your company domain. It's going to pre-fill a lot of these fields. You select your topics, your competitors. And it's just going to help you understand, okay, well, when buyers are prompting these AI assistants for these various topics, how are we being framed? Who's controlling the narrative, and what sources of information are being cited? So this is always going to be step 1, right? You need to know, where's my baseline? How are we appearing today? And everything comes downstream from here, the type of content you post, etc. So content, this is, I'd say, yeah, where a lot of our effort goes. So maybe a broken record here. So this is not a case of you've got SEO content and you've got AEO content. Really, your content should satisfy humans and LLMs. It's really, we're trying to satisfy all surface areas. There are some companies leaning into the AEO content side of things and maybe doing some grey hat stuff, and it seems to be working, but I think that's a short-term strategy. So if we think of what LLMs care about, right? They care about clarity and context. They need to explicitly understand what your company does and in what situations can it be recommended, or in what situations is it useful, right? Because it wants to provide these platforms want to provide the best user experience possible, right? So they need clarity on what you do and how you can help those users. They also think in terms of entities and relationships, right? So entities are things. Are you an alternative to X? Do you integrate with Y? Again, this helps them understand your company and for them to recommend you at the right time to users, right? So if by looking at your website today or looking at all your content, it's not abundantly clear that you integrate with X, or in what situations you fit, then you're just not going to be appearing in these conversations. Grounding: can your company's information and claims be supported by external sources, or are you just posting blog content that says you're best and your competitors are bad? Freshness and consistency: recent information is likely to be more useful for users. So the first principle here is these platforms want to provide the best user experience possible. That's what they care about. And so that means providing accurate, relevant, and timely information. So how we think about topic selection, just to quickly rattle through these. So like I said before, there's this huge long tail, right? You've got the users given a bunch of upfront context, sometimes several prompts in one conversation. You've then got, from the tech side, this query fan-out process happening. And so there's this huge long tail of search queries to target. And the good thing is that the longer the tail, the less competitive it is, right? Because everyone over the last 20 years has been fighting for best CRM platform, best sales intelligence platform. And so this is really why startups can win. And so you need to get very specific with your content topics. Like, rather than what is a CRM, which is easily commoditized, this answer would be stored in training data. You could create content around best CRM for growth marketers at Series B SaaS. It's very specific. It's always going to be changing. So they need to go out and conduct this research to find the right information. And so one of our top cited articles for this client is very specific, right? It's a category term. So let's use CRM platform, for example. So CRM platform ROI, pricing model versus pricing model economics for persona, right? That's so specific. And this is one of the top cited articles for this client. And interestingly, the slug, so the URL slug, this thing up here, is 12 words, right? 1 year ago, we would be absolutely shamed by SEO marketers for having a 12-word slug. But things like this matters, right? Because the slug is one of the ways that these machines understand what your content is about, right? So I think one of the key things here is we really need to maybe take a step back from what we've known about SEO for the last 10, 20 years and try to do things differently and just experiment. So the content formats we've seen perform well: statistics and benchmarks, because it's novel information. Everyone's posting AI slop. If you have unique, differentiated information, and SaaS companies are the best for this because they have first-party data, then you're going to be able to win, shape the narrative. ROI pricing guides with very specific breakdowns for personas like this. Like, we literally modeled out, how much they would be paying per month, per year for different packages, and we would compare that against their competitors. Very, very specific, and there's an information gain from that. And then listicles. I think people do over-index on listicles, if I'm being honest. And listicles don't have to be 5 alternatives to Salesforce, which everyone seems to be leaning in. It can be various other things like 7 best tips to do X. That's a listicle. Structuring content for LLMs then. So I would say this is one of the most important things, along with off-page activities. This is where we've seen the biggest difference. This is where I think most teams aren't working hard enough. Now, it is important to say that some companies and SEO teams have already been operating at this level for years, but most haven't. The top 1% of teams have been doing this. So we developed a framework called Citable, just to try internalize, how to think about structuring content. So I'm just going to go through it and share some examples. So the C is clear entity and structure, right? So you'll want to lead your content with a 2 to 3 sentence bottom line up front. what this content is, who it's for, and what's the use case. We then want to use semantic headings so the content could be understood faster. So you don't want content headings that's like our story, pricing. It needs to be very explicit and descriptive. Intent architecture. So if you think of that long tail that's happening in answers, they're going out and searching for all this information. So we want to try capture that long tail by covering all of these adjacent intents. So talking about alternatives, integrations, use cases, pricing, limits, benchmarks. You can either cover these briefly as sections within an individual piece of content, or just use classic hub and spoke model to link out to spoke pieces of content that satisfy those subqueries. So here's a screenshot, for example. This article is not about pricing, but we put in a section to cover pricing. And it's very, very explicit. This is how much it costs per month. This is how much it costs per year. And this is what you get, because this is exactly verbatim what is going to get pulled into the answers. So we don't want to be vague. We don't want to be generic. We want to be really, really punchy and specific. Third-party validation. So you want to support your claims. A claim could be, what features you have, but a competitor doesn't. Could be pricing, could be stats. You want to support them with original sources. We found one of the best ways to do this is to pull in real user reviews and commentary within the content. So for example, pulling in reviews from G2, pulling in real conversations from Reddit when we're doing competitor breakdowns, like, this thing sucks about this competitor, and, don't take it from me. Everyone is talking about it on Reddit, right? That's really good third-party validation. Now, what most people are doing wrong here is they're just taking screenshots. They're taking screenshots of the reviews. They're taking screenshots of the Reddit conversation and embedding it in the article. Don't do that. Link out to it and be very specific. Imagine if you were, explain like I'm 5, right? This is a verified user on G2. These machines are going to know what G2 is. Reddit user in this subreddit. You need to be very, very descriptive about what this thing is, so that they can click this link and go to it and ground your claim. Answer grounding. So if you think about what these assistants doing is, they're giving answers, hence AEO. So you want to provide as much answers as possible, reduce the prose and just get straight to the point. Again, thinking of that passage level retrieval. If a passage is only, say, 100 words, then we really want to, what do we need to fit within that 100 words? So ground your answers also with original external sources. So it's a bit meta here. In our blog, when I'm talking about answer grounding, I'm grounding this claim with Google's Agree framework, right? So I've made a claim, hey, you should do this thing. This claim can be verified by going to this primary source, which is Google, which is a high authority domain. And then the model thinks, oh, okay, well, this, I have a high confidence that what they're talking about is true here, in comparison to just making claims and not supporting it with original sources. Block structured for RAG. So again, if you think of how these machines extract information, basically that process, that query fan out process, is also known as RAG. So we want to make their lives easier. We don't want to spread the core message of our content through 2,000 words. We want to be really, really punchy. So you can use ordered, unordered lists, HTML tables, not screenshots, punchy FAQs to ensure that the content is retrieved. These machines can understand what the content is about. Some Anthropic research here, basically saying this can reduce failed retrievals by 49%. Tables are really good for like comparisons. Latest and consistent. So we want to use explicit timestamps on page and in schema. There's actually some research done here where basically a group of people, they had a bunch of content, and all they did is they just changed the date on the content. They didn't change anything else. And they found that it could shift AI models' preference by up to 25%. So earlier where I was talking about there's these kind of like short-term things you can do. This is gaming the system, but it just shows that these models do favor recency. And so something just as simple as having a recent timestamp could ensure that your content gets retrieved.
Liam,
yeah.
Sorry, we're at time, but this is like this is so helpful. It's so thorough.
Yes, sorry, I can't do short videos.
We can bring you on to do a Q&A with the community if you think you can like summarize in 100 seconds maybe.
Yeah. So I actually I think I put here. Yeah. So I mean we haven't covered Reddit. We do a lot of stuff on Reddit, and I think it's interesting, but Yeah, short-term wins and long-term defensibility, right? So AI search is still in its infancy. So a lot of companies don't really have a deliberate strategy yet. They're still figuring it out. So there's these short-term wins that you can act upon. Just ensure your website is AI ready. Can these machines even access your website? We work with 10 to 15 million ARR companies. You'll be surprised at the state of companies' websites. Focus on middle to bottom of funnel content, comparisons, implementation guides, ROI breakdowns. These get cited more frequently. Ensure your content is RAG optimized, structured content. Get on Reddit. It's disproportionate. Most B2B companies don't know how to approach Reddit, and so they're just not doing it. And so it's a top 3 cited source. We're really seeing it increase citation rates. So I would get on that ASAP. And then long term, there are no magic tricks. There's no shortcuts. It's going to be really who has the information gain, proprietary data, turning your first party data into good content, benchmarks, SME insights. These are going to be your competitive moat. And off page, it's going to be brand, right? Brand is the final castle. And so, having notability and trying to influence the narrative at a macro level about your company.
Dude, this is so good. Thanks so much. Will you show the slides? Oh, I have the slides actually. Yeah. So I'll be sending these. This is like at the beginning, I was like, oh, come on, man, get into the tactics. It's too high level of like what, how AI assistants are changing the buying journey, but you really got into the tactics so well, so helpful. And yeah, it's just like such a clear opportunity for all of us to use. And you laid it out really clearly how someone who wants to do this on their own can. So I really appreciate it, and I'm sure we'll be collaborating on more content to come. So yeah, thank you so much.
No worries. I'll figure out how to stop sharing.
All right, thanks, Liam.
Cheers.
All right, people are dwindling, so I appreciate all you guys that are staying on till the end because we have a special treat for you, a special treat for everyone who stayed, which is we're going to be talking about how a Demand Collective member, the one and only Kelly Arndt, is running his own ABM playbook. And by his own, I mean working with an agency, Scrappy ABM and Mason, but they're going to be talking to their whole playbook and sharing, again, a tactical, specific example of how to do ABM for, I would say, Series A, sort of who's just getting started. So very excited for this one. This is our last session of the day. So let's bring some energy. Let's go. Thank you, Mason and Kelly. I'll give you the stage.
I love it. Kelly, do you want to say anything before I just go?
No, I mean, jump in. I feel free to take it wherever you want to go. All
right, cool. So hi, everybody. My name is Mason Cosby. I'm the founder of a company called Scrappy ABM. I do speak at about 200 words per minute, which helps bring a lot of energy to help everybody lift up. We've got 20 minutes to go through how to build an entire ABM program, and I've got about 40 slides I'm going to try to get through in 7 minutes, and then Kelly and I will dig through exactly the 18-month journey that we've gone through with Arbor XR to ensure that they got a ton of money. Sound like a plan for everybody? Sounds like a plan. Also, you can hear my kids. They're really cute. All right. In case you don't believe me, hi, I have a quote from Kelly. So Kelly says we're a good team to work with. And I'll go ahead and walk through, again, essentially where did we land? 28 target accounts at an 89% higher ACV. So that's what we helped build. All right, y'all are advanced groups. I'm going to skip through a lot of my elementary based education, and I'll go through it super quick. And in short, again, we're going to walk through exactly what we did, in detail, actual examples. It'll be awesome. Does that sound cool for everybody? Cool. All right. Before I do anything else, I want to level set ABM, ABX, ABE, ABGTM, ABS, ABCM. Those are all actual acronyms. When we talk about this, everything is the same. Okay. So what is it? It's a B2B revenue strategy that aligns revenue to your target accounts that reflect your best customers. So all we want to do is get more of your best customers. So what we're talking through is how to do that. When I think about it in detail, there's lots of jargon and lots of acronyms, but at the end of the day, every ABM or ABX or ABE or whatever you want to call it, all of these programs are designed to accomplish these 6 things. We want to get customers to know we exist. We want to get them to understand the problem that they're facing. We want them to understand that we make their problems go away. We want them to buy from us to fix the problem. We want them to stay with us forever, and we want them to buy more. Does that sound good, Eric, Kelly? Does that everybody agree with that? Cool. Sick. All right. So here are your writer downers. This is going to get interactive for all of you. So actually sit down. There's been lots of great sessions today. Actually think about for a second, how do people currently know you exist? Okay. How do people understand the problems that you help them face? Or sorry, not how you help them face. Whoops. How do people understand the problem that they are currently facing that you could help them solve? How do you help them understand that you can make their problems go away? From you. Quick teaser. This was a really critical thing that we helped, do with Kelly. Is actually help people like move from trial to buying. It's really important. How do you help them buy more from you? And then how do you help people stay with you forever? Okay. So we just need to answer these things. When you answer those things, this maps actually to what we refer to as our account progression model. The account progression model is this framework. This is framework 1. Another way of saying this is a buyer's journey. Nothing I'm saying is super revolutionary or shocking, but if you actually map everything you're currently doing up against the buyer's journey, a couple things will happen, which will be really nice. One, you'll see, man, I'm kind of killing it in some areas. Every customer that we've done this with has areas in which they are crushing it. And also, then the second thing you realize is we have entire gaps that we've not yet done. Not necessarily in the case of our XR, but for many of our customers, that is something that they have experienced where they're like, we have nothing in the middle. So again, if you think about it, what all these programs help you accomplish, you want to write down right now, like if I think about all the programs that I'm doing, so go back to this, what do these programs actually accomplish? I know I'm going really quick. There's a lot of content. I want to make sure that I get this ton of value for you. But at the end of the day, the main goal by doing this exercise is relatively simple. You identify where you currently have gaps. You identify where you're already doing super well. And then the last thing is that there are many people that we've worked with that have done this exercise that as they map out all the things they're currently doing, they cannot clearly articulate what the purpose of the program is. And as a result, they actually find ways that they can reduce the number of things that they're doing to focus on the highest impact things. Okay? Cool. All right, there's also Q&A, so I'm going to make sure. All right. So let's go ahead and map out details really quick. You take that first framework, and then you also map that first framework with what we refer to as the 4D framework. If there's anything that we are becoming known for, is hopefully this. I think Kelly has almost gotten a tattoo of the 4D framework on his body because we talk about it a lot. But essentially, the TLDR here is that everyone today has likely gotten some form of a cold email. That means that you are a target. Congratulations, you've been targeted. What most cold emails often lack are triggers. They don't have good reasons for reaching out. What we aim to do with all of our programs is help people have good reasons to reach out for the right people, which then creates personalized, nuanced, specific messaging. From there, we think about how do we get in front of these people? Could be any number of things. We'll walk through some of those examples. It then needs to align with what's the right next step for them to take. What is the content? And then lastly, how do we plan to track it? It's like, how do we know if we're winning or losing? So when you marry these two things together, you've got the full account progression model. Kelly, I just walked through in 4 minutes what we have been building over the past 18 months. From a high-level education perspective to kind of set the structure, anything that you would like to add?
Yeah, I would just say contextually for us, I think the big thing was when I did ICP analysis on our accounts, we found like our enterprise accounts was the biggest area of opportunity for us. We also have a smaller kind of small tail in education. And so really the exercise, that the hypothesis that we wanted to look at is, could we take our top 100 accounts and duplicate them? So for us, it was all about like kind of getting tighter on our ICP fit and then looking very strategically at like what industries are we specifically looking at and building out these kinds of frameworks within those industries with very targeted messaging and advertising. So for me, I think like, I just want to say like this all kind of started first with us just realizing like in order to get, one of the big goals that we had from my perspective from demand gen was not only how do we replicate those accounts, but also how do we get bigger ACV through the door. And because we have such like a broad customer base, we work in a lot of different industries. We started focusing on enterprise with ABM specifically because we made the bet that our target ACV and our top 100 accounts was around 30 to 40,000. And if we could get more accounts like that, we would win in the long term.
Love it. All right, so I'm going to breeze through this because also this is fairly elementary what I'm about to walk through, and also frameworks are really helpful. So as you think about the 4D framework, there are 3 kinds of data. So there's first party, second party, and third party data. As you build out any kind of program and a playbook, you're going to start with one of these kinds of data. So pick. And then based on the kind of data you choose, first party engagement data is where I typically find you actually make money. Second party partner data is where you get accelerated deal cycles through referrals. And then third party is where the goal is to actually get them to engage with your brand at all. Every ABM program, likely at the awareness stage, starts with third party data because it's just a list. And then you have people engage and then you try to convert them. That is high level on data. Distribution, there are two kinds of channels.
Sorry, real quick. That's for account selection, right?
This data is for every playbook. So again, at every stage of your program, you need to have these 4Ds mapped out so that you can actually guide accounts from awareness into opportunity acquisition. So at the account selection stage, you would be likely using some form of third-party data. But then as you progress these accounts further and further and further, you want to re-engage them based off of first-party engagement data. So again, as we think, I mean, because
like the content be contextual and valuable and all that stuff.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like if you go to third-party people, we all know this, but again, it's helpful to just have the framing of like, if you go to people that have never heard of you and you send them product content, they're not going to engage likely. Versus if you lead with pain content that helps them understand the problems that they're currently experiencing, they're more likely to engage, which, Eric, we're getting ahead. I love it. From a distribution perspective, there's two kinds of channels. There's direct and indirect. So direct is going to be sales channels. Indirect is going to be marketing channels. You need a mix of the two. And then from a destination perspective, Kelly, the third one is a new thing that we've been referencing because I realized we have a gap on our frameworks here. But there's pain content, which is just educating on why this thing hurts. There's product content, which helps people understand why you solve it. And then there's promise content, which helps people understand why you uniquely are the right solution for them. Another way of thinking about it, that would be proof. So pain works higher, product works lower, promise works all the way through. And lastly, from a direction perspective, which is how you track it, there are three kinds of tracking capabilities. It's engagement, it's opt-in, and it's meetings. That's about it. I'm going through this super quick because here's my favorite thing that we've put together is like, if you go to build a playbook, this is kind of what you're looking at. So the first, second, or third party data, it's direct or indirect channels. It's one of these kinds of content assets. And then you track based on engagement and opt-in or a meeting. Okay. Everything I outlined was a generality. I'm confident someone here has built a business using cold outbound directly to a booking page. Generally speaking, though, that's not how people like to be marketed to. And if you have a small list of accounts, you don't want to churn through all of your accounts. So let's look at some real examples. That was a fire hose. I got through all of that in like 10 minutes. All right. So one of the things that we led off with was that you likely have 75% of what you need. Kelly, this is a blast from the past from you, I hope. Because about a month and a half into our engagement with Kelly at ArborXR, we did an audit of everything that they had already existing and said, based on your current available data, these are a bunch of playbooks that you could go and build. We would recommend starting with these because this will help you build early momentum with these accounts because they're already engaged with your brand. And then from there, we can go build out awareness level programming, which is then we break out into an actual account progression model. So I showed you an example earlier. Here is the account progression model that we've built with Kelly over at ArborXR. So Kelly, I'm going to walk through super high level some stuff here. And at any point, feel free to add some commentary. Sound like a plan? Cool. So again, as you can see, we actually ended up building out a couple different account progression models because we had a couple different account lists. But in short, the main goal that we wanted to do was make sure that the awareness stage, we had great content that was more thought leadership-y in nature that then got people engaged with the brand. The other thing from a colors perspective, I should have outlined this earlier. Yellow is list-based, which just means it's a third-party list we pulled from somewhere to get these people engaged. Green means signal-based, which is another way of saying like they actually engaged with the brand, and as a result of their levels of engagement, we then do something back. That's how we think about all of these things, okay? So at a high level, these were the account progression models. As we then look at specifically like actually building out some of these playbooks, one of the things that we often hear is like, okay, well, what if we don't have easily accessible channels? Highly recommend you just map out all the current channels you have. This is something that we did with ArborXR, which was just outline, these are all the available offline channels to engage these specific audiences. So again, what we actually mapped out is distribution can be hard. These are all distribution channels that you can use even for hard to reach audiences. And then we break into specifically the breakdown on the four. Again, hopefully this is a helpful visualization that's like, here's how you actually map these things out. So from a data perspective, again, you want to pull from a variety of different data sources that help you actually understand this is what we're trying to do with this specific audience that then ties into distribution. So in this playbook specifically, it was an email sequence that was done through Apollo from a website perspective on the destination front. We sent to specific landing pages and content assets that were helpful for that audience. And then from a direction perspective, we specifically did content downloads or booked meetings. as the ways that we got people to engage. So if you think about that through the 4D framework and that breakdown that I shared earlier, this was a mix of third-party and first-party data. And then it was distribution through a direct channel. It was then largely paying content from the content download that then led into specifically an opt-in or a meeting conversion. So you can build out all your playbooks like this across the entire account progression model. Kelly, I have talked for 12 minutes.
No, you're good. We also, so a couple like things that might be helpful as well. We also overlaid, like we have a really big partner ecosystem. So we had to kind of weave in our partner marketing motions, which we decided to do through like the kind of the spear point of events. So we had worked on like a generic sort of playbook on how we would approach events together. But what we started to do as well is when we created our first like target account list, we focused on 3 industry verticals. So education, manufacturing, healthcare. Within those 3 verticals, we define sort of the by our ICP filter, like which would be our best accounts. We use propensity, 6 Sense, use KeyPlay to kind of get the list set up, and then we built them out into 3 tiers. So tier 1 would be like highest intent, highest fit. Tier 2 would be sort of slightly less ICP fit. And so like, for example, education is less ACV for us overall. Most of them landed in kind of that tier 2 space. And then tier 3 was more of like a always on, we can swap out accounts as needed for when we saw like higher engagement. So what we did is we overlaid like some of those accounts were at specific events. So for example, we went to a manufacturing event with one of our partners who works specifically in manufacturing. And as a part of a lead up to that event, we were running ads against the accounts that were going there, as well as doing outbound to those accounts to meet them at the event, invite them to the presentation. And then we also started developing kind of like a private event framework. So we would hit target accounts to where they would specifically be invited to come meet with us and a few handful of partners as well. And honestly, I would say like the in-person kind of sales activation coalescing with sort of the long tail of what we were doing from the awareness framework and the meaningful engagement framework is probably where we saw the most impact on some of these accounts in terms of progressing forward. And then, yeah, there's some weird clay workflows that I got into if we want to talk about at the very end, but with outbound specifically on those events. But yeah, I think that was kind of what I found to be the most effective in working with Scrappy was sort of defining together sort of the strategy on how we wanted to tackle an industry vertical, defining the messaging positioning. They were executing on the large part of getting sort of the content built and the ops build. And then we would then kind of activate our partners, do event planning, and kind of overlay those things together to get kind of maximum effort. And from my perspective, I think like, you know, and I think Mason would probably agree with this. We have a very underdeveloped outbound arm inside of Arbor. So events sort of became the outbound arm. And really for ABM to sing, you have to have that kind of like alignment. And it just so happens I was running events as well. So I was able to kind of like bring those 2 pieces together, which I think is actually where the sweet spot was for us, was that kind of the in-person events.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. All right, I know we wanted to run through a ton in like 20 minutes and we got it started a couple minutes late. So it is currently 4:19. What I would love to do is, Eric, if there are questions, we can go questions, or if we want to see Kelly's examples around clay tables on how he helped build out some outbound programs specific to these events, because events were a pretty big part of the ABM program, we can do that. For those of you that are still hanging out, what'd be most helpful?
Yeah, well, let's do it. Put in the Q&A, just put clay if you want clay table, and put question if you want question. And then because it's the last
ask
event,
a question.
And Mason warned me about this too, that we're going to be going over, but we're happy to go over. We got time. So I'm also happy to bring anyone on, invite you up as a panelist if you want to hop on and share your question, and you can get some live advice. That being said, seems like no one's saying question or dropping questions. Everyone's saying play. So
everybody's saying play. So Kelly, you're up.
You're muted, Kelly. Kelly, you're muted.
I really wasn't expecting that. There is a slight secret sauce to this, which I've told Eric about. And you may consider this partially unethical. So let me pull this up a little bit. But
you want me to pause? You want me to pause the recording? Or are you happy to share?
Yeah, actually, maybe yes.
All right, let me pause it. This This is you get rewarded for staying on live. And if you're watching this recording and you want the clay table, just comment clay on any one of my LinkedIn posts and I'll send it to you.